Hey guys, how are you all? I hope you all are doing well. Today we're going to see an amazing what-if story, but before we start, it's just a humble request that if you're new here, please subscribe because it actually motivates me a lot to post more. Also, the stories on my channel are fully written by me, so if you have any suggestions for what-if stories, please let me know below the comment section. Now, without any further delay, let's start. What if Rimuru faced the Olympus gods? Rimuru woke up to static, not normal static. Not the faint buzz he got when a new skill evolved or Seal reshuffled some part of his soul. This was heavy, like someone had wrapped his senses in wet cloth and then decided to rub sand into it for fun. He tried to move and felt his body jiggle. Slime form. All right. So far, normal. He opened magic sense. The world slammed into him in broken pieces. Information came in spikes instead of a smooth flow. Heat, cold, distant voices, the smell of smoke, the sharp tang of iron, all jumbled. He felt the sky press down with a strange kind of pressure that did not belong to his universe. It tasted metallic and old, like rust on a blade that had drawn too much blood. Seal spoke in his mind, calm as always. Report distortion in the local law set. Interference identified as foreign divine field. Adjusting filters. Rimuru let out a mental sigh. So we got Ice Sky inside an Ice Sky. Great. Answering inner complaint. You are not amusing. You love me. There was a half-second pause that felt like a smug look. Affirmative. Magic sense settled into something he could use. Not perfect, but enough. He floated in place and took a better look around. He was at the edge of a hill. Below, a city clung to the slopes and spilled into a wide valley. Tall white columns rose near the center around a long open space. Torches burned, even though the sun hung low in a bruised sky. The smell of sweat and smoke rose from the crowd packed around the open space. At first glance, it looked like a festival. People in bright cloth, banners whipping in the wind, drums pounding in a steady beat. Children on shoulders. Wine. Laughter. Then he focused. The open space was not a square. It was an arena. Stone walls. Sand darkened in patches. Blood. Old and fresh. He felt the way the crowd moved, the way their voices rose. Not joy. Frenzy. Seal gave a neat summary in his ear. Preliminary classification. Human urban center in a late Bronze or early Iron Age state. Population density heavy. Mana density moderate. Divine energy density unusually high. Divine. So the Olympus part was real then. He had seen enough worlds now that the basic idea did not shock him. Different pantheons, different rule sets, different self-important beings sitting on clouds and hurling lightning at anyone they did not like. Still, this place felt wrong in a way Tempest never had. The divine field is layered over the entire region, Seal went on. The pattern suggests a centralized pantheon with a single seat of authority. The interference with magic sense is an intentional side effect. It limits information flow to prevent mortals from perceiving divine mechanics. So the gods jam the signal so no one can see what they really look like. Nice. That is one way to phrase it. Rimuru rolled toward the edge of the hill, then reshaped his body. Limbs pushed out of slime. He pulled a cloak of simple cloth from his stomach and tossed it over himself. Human form. Simple traveling clothes, nothing too flashy. His aura he kept tight inside. No need to start with a full Demon Lord flex. He started down the path that wound toward the city gates. As he walked, he passed small shrines carved into the rock. Rough stone images of men with spears, women with crowns, animals with too many eyes. Offerings lay at their feet. Bread, wine, small clay jars that smelled of oil and herbs. A few shrines had dried blood on the stone. Seal counted under her breath. 17 minor gods, or spirits, 3 major. Main worship in this region appears to focus on a war deity. Cross-reference to local divine signatures. Rimuru stepped closer to one of the shrines. The stone figure was a man in a helmet, muscles carved with loving care. A spear leaned against his shoulder. The base of the shrine was ringed with weapons. Broken swords, shattered shields, and bones. Small ones. Rimuru stared at those for a long moment. Seal. Yes, those are not animal bones. Confirmed. Human juvenile remains. He pulled his gaze away, and kept walking. His jaw felt tight. He had seen worse. He had done worse. But Tempest had rules. His people had chosen them. No pointless slaughter. No games with lives. Whatever this war god was, they did not care. The city gates came into view. Two tall towers, a carved relief of a man with a spear above the arch. The guards in front wore bronze armor polished to a shine and watched the crowds pouring in through the gate. Rimuru slipped through the edge of the flow. A quick charm and mild illusion wrapped around him, nudging attention away. To the guards, he was just another stranger in dusty clothes. Not worth a second look. Once inside, the noise doubled. Vendors shouted. Someone laughed too loud. Somewhere, someone cried. The smell of roasted meat mingled with sweat and smoke. All of it flowed toward the arena. Rimuru let the crowd pull him along. He did not need to push. Bodies pressed around him, carried by the same hungry energy, the same mix of fear and excitement. He picked up stray words. For Ares, glory, honor, pay off the debt. Do not let him die for nothing. Seal translated without being asked, slotting unfamiliar words into his head until they felt natural. The arena wall rose above them, pale stone stained dark near the base. Inside, the roar of voices throbbed like a living thing. The entrance tunnel was a choke point, but the city knew this drill. Guards moved people along with practiced shoves and bored looks. Rimuru slipped through and came out onto the lower stand. The sight hit him like a hard slap. The arena was a circle of sand, ringed by stone seating that climbed in tiers. The front rows were already splashed with red in places. At the center, two men struggled, bodies slick with sweat and blood. Around them, broken weapons lay scattered. No armor, no magic, just raw meat trying to cut raw meat. The crowd screamed with every strike. Some in anger, some in joy. A drum boomed at the edge of the arena. Above the highest tier, a stone altar stood under a heavy banner. The banner bore the image of the helmeted war god. A brazier burned in front of it, flames licking high. Rimuru tasted the divine energy there. Seal spoke, voice flat. Confirmed. The war deity is watching. Energy's signature labeled Ares. Domain. Bloodshed, war lust, conquest. Rimuru watched as one of the fighters stumbled. The man was older, beard matted with sweat, knife shaking in his grip. His opponent was younger, leaner, moving with the desperate speed of someone who knew he did not have the strength to last. The older man slipped. The younger one drove his blade forward. It sank into the chest with a wet sound. The crowd exploded. Blood sprayed. The older man fell to his knees, then onto his face. The younger one stared at his hands as if they did not belong to him. Up at the altar, the brazier flames flared taller for a moment, then settled. Ares just fed, Seal said. Energy spike confirms sacrifice intake. Rimuru felt something hot rise in his chest. Sacrifice. Right. That word. The gates at the far side of the arena opened. Another pair of fighters were shoved out, this time a man and a boy. The man shoved the boy behind him, then squared his shoulders. They both held short swords. Rimuru focused on the boy. 15 at most, if he went by human standards. Maybe younger. The drum boomed again. Rimuru heard the people behind him chanting. For Ares. For Ares. For Ares. The boy stumbled, almost tripping on the sand. The man caught him with one arm, pulled him close. They spoke, but the noise swallowed their words. Seal lowered the background noise in his senses for him. The boy whispered, Do we really have to, Father? The man took a long breath. If we run, they will kill your mother and the others. We fight. Maybe you'll be satisfied. Maybe you can live. The boy stared at his sword. His hands shook. The gates behind them clanged shut. Rimuru did not realize he had started to move until someone grabbed his arm. A woman in the crowd looked at him with wide eyes. Stranger, do not go near the front. They will think you are offering yourself. He blinked at her, then gave a faint smile. It is fine. I just need a better view. He slipped free and walked down the steps. The guards near the edge frowned, but his illusion and a tiny nudge of charm made them look away at the last second. He stepped up to the front, leaned on the stone, and watched. In the arena, the boy and his father faced two other men who had come out from the opposite gate. All four looked exhausted. The crowd wanted a show anyway. The drum boomed. The fight began. It was not a fight. It was a slow, ugly struggle. Feet slipped in the sand. Weapons clashed, then dropped. Blows were clumsy, driven by terror rather than training. Rimuru watched as one of the strangers lunged for the boy. The father stepped in the way and took the blow instead. Steel slid into his side. He gasped and dropped to a knee. The boy screamed and hacked his own blade into the attacker with a wild swing. Luck carried it through. The other man went down. The second stranger turned on the boy with a snarl. Seal, already ready. The man raised his sword. The boy froze. Rimuru flicked a thought. A thin blue blade of water sliced through the air from the shadow of the front wall. It hit the stranger's sword hand just as he swung. The hand came off at the wrist. The sword hit the sand. The man stared at the stump, almost confused. Then he screamed. Blood sprayed in an arc. The crowd went silent for a heartbeat. Then chaos. Shouts rose. Some pointed at the arena floor. Others pointed at the stands. Guards scrambled to see what had happened. Rimuru straightened. He stepped over the low barrier and dropped down into the arena. Sand puffed up around his boots. The man with the severed hand stumbled back, clutching his arm. The boy stared at Rimuru with wide eyes. The father lay half slumped, breathing hard, blood soaking his side. Rimuru raised his hands in a calm gesture. It is all right. I am here to help. The crowd roared. He ignored them. This action will be interpreted as direct interference with the ritual, Seal noted. Expect divine response. Rimuru met the boy's eyes. Do you want to live? The boy nodded so fast he almost fell over. Rimuru smiled. Honest, simple, nothing flashy. Then stay behind me. He turned to the man with the missing hand. The man snarled and tried to lunge, but pain and shock made his leg betray him. He fell to his knees. Rimuru flicked his fingers. Sticky thread lashed out, wrapping the man up like a very angry gift and planting him on the sand. The boy's father groaned. Rimuru knelt beside him, pressed a hand to the wound, and poured healing magic in. Flesh knit. Blood flow slowed, then stopped. The man gasped as pain gave way to a dull ache. He looked down at his side, then up at Rimuru. You are no priest of Ares. Thank the stars for that, Rimuru muttered. The brazier flames at the altar flared again. This time, the energy felt different. Heavier. Focused. Seal's voice sharpened. Divine attention locking on you. This will escalate. Rimuru stood and looked up at the altar. You know, he said under his breath, I really tried to just watch. False. You did not try. Harsh. Accurate. Lightning cracked across the sky with no warning. The smell of ozone slammed into the arena. Wind howled as clouds rolled in out of nowhere, blotting out the sun. The torches around the stands guttered, then flared back to life in the strange light. The crowd went from loud to terrified in a single heartbeat. People dropped to their knees. Some pressed foreheads to the stone. Others raised hands to the sky. Rimuru felt the air thicken with divine power. It poured down toward the altar, then condensed. A figure stepped out of that light. He was tall, built like a veteran who had never missed a day of war. Bronze skin, dark hair as like hot coals. A red cloak snapped behind him, though there was no wind near his body. A spear rested in his hand, its tip gleaming with a light that made human eyes water. Seal tagged him instantly. Primary identification. Ares. Ranking war deity. Combat parameters. High. The god looked around, gaze sweeping the arena. He saw the wrapped-up man, the healed father, the boy clutching his sword, the severed hand in the sand. Then his eyes locked on Rimuru. Who dares? The voice hit the arena like another lightning strike. It was not a shout. It did not need to be. It carried in every ear and rattled every bone. People around the arena flung themselves flat. Even the guards. Rimuru did not bow. He let his cloak flap a little in the wind. That was all. He lifted a hand and gave a lazy wave. Yo! Ares stared. Seal sighed in the back of his head. Your choice of greeting remains suboptimal. It works. The god took a step forward. The sand did not crunch under his feet. It simply agreed to be where he needed it to be. You sever the hand of my champion, mortal. You dare to twist my offering. Rimuru tilted his head. I saved a kid from getting chopped up, so you could feel impressive. The crowd shuddered at the casual tone. Someone near the front whimpered. Ares narrowed his eyes. He raised his free hand and gestured. The bound man with the missing hand jerked. Invisible force yanked him forward like a rag doll. He stopped at Ares' side, hovering in the air, wrapped in Rimuru's threads. The god flicked a glance at the bindings. Not mortal work. He turned back to Rimuru. You are no priest, no hero. You carry no ichor. Rimuru spread his arms a little and spun once in place for show. I am a slime. The silence after that was sharp enough to cut. Ares stared as if he had misheard. Seal supplied a dry comment. You are underplaying your classification, but the effect on his pride is acceptable. Rimuru smiled. The god's lip curled. A minor river spirit then. Some slime thing that crawled out of the mud with a scrap of power. You dare stand in my arena. You keep saying it is yours, Rimuru said. But funny thing, I see people. I see scared kids force a die so you can snack on their souls. I see a father bleeding out for a god who cannot be bothered to watch until something goes wrong. He shrugged. I do not see much worth respecting. A murmur ran through the crowd. Fear. Shock. A thin, almost invisible thread of agreement that most did not dare let themselves feel. Ares felt it. Rimuru saw the moment his jaw tightened. Divine energy surged. Seal murmured a warning. Incoming strike. Output high enough to destroy the arena and part of the city. Rimuru sighed. Of course. The god lowered his spear. The tip flared with blood-red light. The air around it trembled. The sand at his feet started to char from the heat alone. I will tear your essence apart, slime. I will spread you across the earth as an example. Rimuru lifted one hand, palm out toward Ares. Try not to miss then. There are children in here. That made the god grin. There are always children. He thrust the spear forward. The world went white. The blast of divine energy hit faster than a human eye could follow. It was not a simple bolt. It was a wave, a lance of compressed rage and divine authority, meant to pierce any defense and erase whatever it hit from existence. It smashed into the barrier Rimuru had thrown up the instant Seal had called the strike. His multi-barrier flared, layers of magic folding over each other and weaving into a dense wall. The spear strike met that wall. For a moment, everything was just light and sound. The stand shook. Stone cracked. People screamed, voices eaten by the roar. Then the light faded. Dust filled the air. Rimuru stood where he had been, cloak snapping in the residual wind. The barrier around him flickered, then settled back into place, faint and transparent. At his back, the boy and his father huddled, eyes squeezed shut. They were unharmed. The sand at Rimuru's feet was glass now. Ares stared. You possess no ichor, he said slowly. Yet you blocked my spear. Rimuru flexed his hand. His palm tingled from the impact, but the barrier had taken a brunt. Magicules are handy, he said. You should try them. Blasphemy, someone whispered up in the stands. Seal's voice was cool. Data collected. Divine strikes convert will and ichor into destructive force. Efficiency is moderate, but total capacity is limited to their bodily reserve and external worship intake. Compared to your core pool, stamina advantage rests with you. So he hits hard but runs out of gas faster than I do. Correct. Ares must have felt it too. Divine power rolled off him in a heavy wave, but there was a faint tremor at the edge of it now. You will kneel, he growled. No. Rimuru stepped forward. The god moved faster this time. He flickered from one point to another, spear leaving streaks of red light with every thrust. He aimed for the gaps in the barrier, the places where energy shifted as Rimuru moved. To the crowd, it looked like a blur of god and glowing shield. To Rimuru, it was slower. Not easy, but readable. He let Seal feed trajectories into his head. Ares' arm angle, the shift of his shoulders, the way weight moved through his stance. Every thrust predicted a fraction of a second ahead, just enough for Rimuru to tilt, step, or reinforce the right layer of the barrier. Spear strikes hammered against the invisible wall. Each one sent a shock into Rimuru's arms and chest, even though the barrier was not physical. Sand exploded. Shards of stone whipped past, but the boy behind him did not get hit. The father did not get hit. The bound champion at Ares' side swung like a fish on a line, but remained intact. You fight like a coward, Ares hissed, hiding behind walls. Rimuru smiled. Hey, I call it caring about collateral. You should try it sometime. The god snarled and shifted tactics. Divine fire erupted under Rimuru's feet. Pillars of flame shot up around him, trying to cage him in. Rimuru let his body loosen. Slime instinct tugged at him, the urge to flow, to slip through cracks. He indulged it. His form blurred, dissolving into blue gel for a breath before solidifying a few steps away, outside the flame ring. The crowd gasped. Seal noted, amused. Your show-off quota has exceeded the average threshold. He started it, Rimuru said. Ares slammed the butt of his spear into the ground. The entire arena shook. Cracks spidered out from his feet. The stands groaned. One section of stone gave way, and a chunk fell, sending people tumbling. Rimuru flicked out threads of magic. Sticky lines lashed out, catching falling bodies, yanking them back up before they could break on the floor. The crowd looked between the god and the slime, between the one who had almost crushed them and the one who had stopped it without even looking directly at them. Ares saw that too. His eyes burned hotter. Enough. Divine power surged again. For a moment, his form seemed to grow taller, his armor brighter. Symbols of war floated around him, ghostly banners and echoes of screams. He took the spear in both hands. Seal whispered, he is preparing a focused concept strike. Localized. Peak output. If it lands, it will breach base barrier layers. Recommend counterattack to disrupt cast. Rimuru nodded once. Fine. My turn. He let the barriers relax, just a little, and let some of his own power leak out. Not much. Just enough. The air around him thickened with magicules, rich and deep. The divine field that had tried to muddy his senses sparked as the two forces rubbed against each other. Even from the stands, people felt it. A weight. A pressure. Rimuru pointed at Ares. You want a straight fight, he said. Let's play. He drew on gluttonous king Beelzebub, letting its hunger stretch toward the divine power, clinging to the arena. He did not devour the people or the place. He focused on the residue in the air, the echo of all those sacrifices Ares had taken. The energy tasted bitter and hot. Weapons, screams, dying prayers. Beelzebub swallowed. Ares staggered. The floating banners around him flickered. The energy around his spear wavered. What are you doing? Rimuru walked forward slowly, sand crunching under his boots. Just cleaning up, he said. All this power. You keep it floating around like smoke. It is messy. Divine energy poured into his stomach and into his core. Seal filtered it, stripping out the worst parts, converting the raw power into something Rimuru could use. Conversion at 87% efficiency. Your capacity is sufficient. No risk of overload. Rimuru rolled his shoulders. His body hummed. The air around him shivered. Ares gritted his teeth and pushed more power into the spear. The glow steadied, but his face had gone tight. Sweat beaded at his temples. You dare feed on my offerings. Rimuru shrugged. Maybe do not throw them around if you do not want someone to pick them up. He lifted his right hand. A small black sphere formed above his palm. It did not glow. It did not crackle. It simply sat there, dense and wrong, bending the air around it. Seal's tone turned careful. Output set to non-lethal level for divine entities. Result predicted. Severe humiliation. Perfect. He flicked the sphere at Ares. It moved faster than sound, a tiny piece of void given shape. The god raised his spear to block on reflex. The sphere touched the weapon. The divine spear did not explode. It did not shatter in every direction. It simply ceased to exist from the point of contact outward. The tip vanished. Then the shaft. The god stared as the weapon in his hands dissolved past his fingers. The effect stopped at his skin, not because it could not go further, but because Seal had set the limit that way. The spear was gone. The banners vanished. The war cries died. The glow around Ares flickered and went out. The god stood in the middle of the arena with empty hands. The crowd was silent. No one even breathed loud enough to hear. Rimuru kept walking until he stood a few paces away from Ares. He did not radiate any more power than before. He did not loom. He simply looked at the god, like a person who had just caught someone kicking a dog. You know, he said softly, you could have stopped that boy from entering the arena. You could have told your priest no. You could have told them to feed the poor instead of feeding you bodies. Ares clenched his fists. That is not how it works. Mortals fight. They bleed. They die. I am war. Rimuru smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then maybe it is time you learn a new way. He snapped his fingers. Thin threads of magic lashed out, wrapping around Ares' armor. Not enough to hurt, just enough to yank. The armor came apart. Plates of divine metal fell away, clattering in slow motion. The red cloak tore free and fluttered to the sand. Underneath, the god looked a lot less like a legend and a lot more like a very strong, very angry man. Scars, yes. Muscle, yes. But no glow. No shining aura. RIMURU did not stop there. The threads tugged again. Ares stumbled. His sandals tore. He landed hard on his side with a grunt. Sand coated his skin. The gathered humans watched as their war god sprawled in the dirt like a drunk soldier who had picked a fight with the wrong stranger at a tavern. RIMURU leaned down a little. From where I stand, you look very mortal. Ares did not answer. His eyes burned with hate and something else that looked suspiciously like fear. Seal spoke cool and precise. Humiliation factor high. Survival instinct engaged. Probability of retreat now above 90%. The god growled, "This is not over, slime. Zeus will hear of this." He pushed himself up, sand sticking to his skin. For a heartbeat, it looked like he might try another attack. Then his gaze slid to the crowd. To the priests frozen at the altar, too terrified to move. To the people staring with new thoughts in their eyes. He bared his teeth. Enjoy your small victory. Divine energy flared around him again. This time it did not feel like a strike. It felt like a door slamming. The space around him twisted. In the next breath, Ares was gone. The arena was silent except for the crackle of the brazier and the faint whimpers of people who were not sure if they were allowed to breathe yet. RIMURU straightened. Seal hummed. First contact complete. Data collected. Local pantheon confirmed. Primary reaction pattern. Violent. Ego-driven. Poor risk management. He let out a slow breath and turned around. The boy stood where he had left him, sword still in hand. His father knelt beside him, clutching his side with one hand. Both stared at RIMURU as if he might vanish if they blinked. RIMURU walked over and crouched down. "Hi," he said gently. "I am RIMURU." The boy swallowed. "You defied Ares." "Yeah, he deserved it." "You will die," the father whispered. "Zeus will send lightning. The priests will curse you. They will curse anyone who spoke with you." RIMURU smiled, tired and a little sad. "Trust me, I have annoyed worse." He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Healing magic flowed, washing away bruises and cuts. The boy flinched, then relaxed as warmth spread through his body. "There. Better." The boy looked up, eyes bright with something that made RIMURU uneasy. "Are you a god?" He hesitated. Seal answered in his head. How you answer will affect local worship patterns. He wanted to say no. He wanted to say he was just a slime who had stumbled into this mess and would leave once he figured out the way back. But divine energy clung to the arena. People had seen a war god stripped like a child and thrown in the sand. The priests were already whispering, trying to wrap words around what had just happened. RIMURU settled on the closest thing to the truth that would not cause more panic. "I am someone who does not like bullies." The boy nodded as if that was enough. The stands behind them stirred. Guards were starting to stand. Priests looked down at him with pale faces. "Hermes will arrive in 2 minutes 31 seconds, Seal said. "Energy signature incoming. Divine messenger class." RIMURU stood. "All right, let's not be here when the next god drops in." He turned to the father. "Can you walk?" The man pushed himself up, wincing. "Yes." "Good. Then take your son and get out of the city for a while. Go to the hills. Do not come back until the sky stops looking angry." The man stared at him, then nodded. "Thank you." He grabbed his son's hand. Together, they hurried toward the nearest gate, slipping through the frozen guards who still had not decided whether they were supposed to stop anyone. RIMURU watched them go. "You are aware that this will not change the system," Seal said softly. "Removing one sacrifice does not end the pattern." "I know," he said, "but it mattered to them. And now the pattern has a crack." He looked up at the altar, at the brazier, then at the sky. Clouds still churned above, heavy and dark. Lightning flickered inside them like an eye opening. Seal's tone sharpened again. Divine signature confirmed. Hermes, mobility specialist. Approach vector. Direct. RIMURU rolled his shoulders. "All right then. Round 2. He stepped back into the center of the arena and waited as the air rippled. The crowd held its breath. The priests gripped their staffs. In the heart of the storm overhead, a new light began to fall. The light that fell from the sky did not feel like Ares. Ares had been raw heat and iron, the taste of blood and rust, a pressure that wanted to crush everything under a boot. This new presence felt lighter on the surface and sharper underneath. Seal spoke before Rimuru even finished the thought. New divine signature. Classification. Messenger and trickster god. High mobility. Designation. Hermes. The light thinned as it dropped, stretching into a lean shape that slowed just above the shattered arena floor. Sand whipped in a circle. Cloaks snapped. People flinched and covered their heads. When the glow faded, a man stood there. He was not huge like Ares. Hermes was slim, almost narrow, with quick eyes that missed nothing. Winged sandals touched the glassed sand without a sound. A short staff rested in his hand. A narrow travel cloak wrapped around him, tied loose enough that he could move in any direction without effort. For a moment, he only looked around. His gaze drifted over the bound champion in the sand, the scorched ring of glass, the cracks in the stands, the priest frozen near the altar, the empty space where Ares had vanished. Then his eyes landed on Rimuru. Rimuru stood in the center of the arena, cloak dusty, hair ruffled by the fading wind. The boy and his father were already gone, lost in the crowd that had started to trickle toward the exits the moment no one was looking at them. Hermes blinked once. Well, he said, that escalated. His voice carried easily without any divine boom. It just slipped through the air, clear and casual. The crowd stayed very quiet. No one moved. Rimuru gave a small wave. Hi, Rimuru. Visiting slime. Hermes stared at him for a long heartbeat, then huffed a short laugh. You are the one who humiliated Ares in front of his own altar. You say that like it is a bad thing. Several people near the front made strangled sounds. Hermes did not look at them. He tilted his head and looked Rimuru up and down again, like he was trying to decide what shelf this strange product belonged on. Seal murmured in Rimuru's mind. His attitude is relaxed, but heart rate is elevated. He is worried. Rimuru could feel that too. There was a tight coil of tension under the god's casual tone. Hermes tapped the staff lightly on the sand. Ares ran to Olympus in a rage, he said. He said a creature with no divine blood threw him in the dirt in front of mortals. He wanted to raise an army. Rimuru sighed. He started it. Hermes nodded slowly. He usually does. His eyes sharpened. Here is the part that matters. Rimuru. Zeus heard. He wants to see you. The priests up near the altar flinched at the name. People dropped to their knees again by reflex. Rimuru did not move. Zeus wants to see me, he repeated. That sounds like the start of a problem. Hermes smiled. It did not reach his eyes. It is also your only chance to walk out of this city without every priest and guard chasing you with whatever they can find. Seal spoke. Logical. The local power structure cannot ignore your actions. Direct audience is inevitable. This route gives more control than a mob. Rimuru rubbed the bridge of his nose. So those are my choices. Angry God King now, or angry mortals and priests plus angry God King later. You often had worse options, Seal said. True. He looked back at Hermes. Fine. I will talk. Hermes let out a quiet breath, the kind someone lets out when the coin lands on the better side for once. Thank you, he said. He turned to the stands. People of the city, he called. You will go home. There will be no more blood in this arena today. No one moved at first. Hermes raised his staff. Power rolled out, light but firm. It washed over the stands in a soft wave. The panic eased. Shoulders lowered. People started to shuffle toward the exits, some glancing back at Rimuru, eyes wide. Rimuru watched them go. You did not wipe their memories, he said. Hermes shook his head. That is a nasty trick, and it never really works. People remember around the blanks. They dream. They whisper. It twists worse than the truth. He looked at Rimuru again. And honestly, I am curious what happens when the truth spreads. Seal gave a small approving note. He shows better sense than average. Hermes stepped closer. I'm going to move us, he said. It will be fast. Try not to break anything on the way. No suiting up speech. No little ritual. Just that. Rimuru smiled. I will try. Hermes reached out and touched his shoulder. The world snapped. For a second, Rimuru felt stretched thin. The arena, the city, the smell of blood and smoke, all folded away like a sheet pulled off a bed. Light blurred. Sound vanished. That all slammed back in new shapes. They stood on a wide stone platform high above a sea of cloud. The air was clear and cool. The sky felt very close. Columns rose on every side, tall enough that even Rimuru had to tilt his head back to see the tops. White stone, polished until it shone. Gold lines ran along the grooves, catching the light. Beyond the platform, the mountain climbed in sharp steps. Temples clung to ledges. Gardens spilled over edges in tidy rows. Water fell from one terrace to another in narrow streams that glittered like strands of metal. It was beautiful in a way that did not hide what sat under it. Rimuru could feel thin lines of energy flowing up the mountain from the world below. Each line carried prayers, fear, gratitude, grief. The power pooled here, feeding the structures, feeding the gods. Seal sum it up. Paradise built on a battery of worship. Structural integrity stable. Ethical integrity questionable. Hermes let go of Rimuru's shoulder and stepped back. "Welcome to Olympus," he said. "Home of the most arrogant family you are likely to meet. You say that like you are not part of it." Hermes grinned. "I deliver the mail." "That is different." He gestured toward a set of broad steps that led toward a large building at the center of the terrace. "The council waits." Rimuru followed. His boots rang against the stone. He kept his aura wrapped tight to avoid triggering every alarm in existence. As they climbed, minor gods and attendants drifted past. Some were little more than walking sparks of divine energy with vague human shapes. Others looked almost mortal, just too bright at the edges. They stared openly at Rimuru. One whispered to another, "That is the one who shamed Ares." Hermes leaned close enough that Rimuru could hear him without anyone else catching it. "They're going to stare for a while," he said. "You broke the usual script." "The usual script. Mortals fear, gods posture, sacrifices burn, nothing ever changes." Rimuru snorted. Then someone needed to scribble over it. Hermes smiled again, genuine this time. "Careful. That kind of thinking is contagious." The main hall of Olympus opened before them. The throne room was a long space with polished floors and a high roof. Columns lined the sides. At the far end, a row of raised seats curved in a half circle. 12 thrones. They were not all the same. One was huge and flashy, carved with thunderbolts and lions. The man who sat on it had a full beard, broad shoulders, and the kind of presence that pressed on the air like a storm cloud. His eyes crackled with pale light, even when he did not move. Zeus. To his right, a woman sat very straight with a crown and a cold gaze that missed nothing. Hera, on one side, a man with dark hair and a deep blue cloak washed with an expression that did not reveal much. Poseidon, further along, a lean woman with gray eyes and an owl on the arm of her chair leaned forward, elbows on knees, interest clear. Athena, a tall man with golden hair and a laurel wreath lounged with one ankle on a knee, fingers tapping in a restless rhythm on the arm of his seat. Sunlight clung to him like it liked him. Apollo, near him, a young woman with a bow across her lap, sat very still. Artemis, a woman with an easy smile and eyes that constantly flicked over people, as if she was measuring every reaction. Aphrodite, a broad man with burn scars along both arms and a leather apron over his chest. Hephaestus, Demeter with her harvest crown. Ares with a fresh mark of irritated pride and no spear. Hermes took a place near the edge, leaning on his staff rather than sitting. At the end of the row, near the floor rather than up high, a small woman in a simple orange dress sat by a low hearth that burned with a steady flame. She did not sit on a throne. She sat on a plain seat with a cushion. Hestia, at the back of the room, not on a throne but present anyway, a tall figure in dark robes with a simple iron circlet stood with his arms folded. His eyes were the color of deep earth, and they carried a tired patience. Hades. Rimuru took all of that in with one slow glance. Seal cataloged each energy signature, each divine domain, each possible threat. Zeus raised a hand. Thunderheads flickered above the roof in response to his mood. The hall fell quiet. "Mortal," he said, "you stand in the hall of Olympus. You will give your name and the line that bore you." Rimuru looked up at him. "Name." Rimuru Tempest. He paused just long enough to be annoying and let the silence stretch. "Line." Slime. A few gods choked. Hermes actually snorted. Ares growled. He mocks us. Rimuru glanced at him. You show up late and have nothing useful to add. At least I bring honesty. Ares surged half out of his seat, but Zeus lifted a hand, and the war god froze, teeth clenched. Lightning flickered in the air around Zeus's fingers. Enough. Zeus focused back on Rimuru. You defeated a god on his own ground, he said. You carry no ichor. You do not smell of Titan or Primordial or any blood we know. He leaned forward. So what are you? Rimuru rolled the question around in his head. He could list skills and titles. He could recite things Seal had told him about his own structure, about how his soul interacted with the void. None of that would mean anything here. He settled on something simpler. I am someone from far away, he said. I fell into your world by accident. I have people to get back to. Hera's eyes narrowed. So you have a realm behind you. An army. No, Rimuru said. I have friends. I have a city. I have responsibilities. Athena tilted her head, studying him. You're a ruler. Yes. A ruler of what exactly? Ares snapped. Slime puddles. Rimuru did not even bother to look at him this time. Of a nation that treats its people as more than fuel for gods. The temperature in the room shifted. Tiny things. A breeze that should not exist in a closed hall. The flame by Hestia's hearth leaned toward him for a second and then straightened. Zeus's fingers tightened on the arm of his throne. You interfere with a divine right, he said. You stand against Ares in front of mortals. Do you think my laws are beneath you? Rimuru shrugged. I think any law that demands the life of a child to entertain a god is rotten. If that law belongs to you, then yes. It is beneath me. The air snapped with static. Lightning flickered around Zeus's shoulders. His eyes lit up fully, white and bright. Careful, Seal warned. His output is much higher than Ares. I see it. Rimuru answered in his head. He kept his face calm. Hades shifted at the back, gaze flicking between Zeus and Rimuru. Athena sat even more forward, fingers tapping a silent pattern against her knee. Hestia's hands tightened on the edge of her seat. Zeus rose from his throne. You talk as if you are equal, he said. You are not. You are a stranger in my sky. Here, my Vortislav. He lifted his hand. A small ball of crackling light formed in his palm. It was no bigger than a fist, but made the air around it buzz. Ozone stung Rimuru's nose. A test, Seal said. Output selected to injure you without destroying the hall. You want to measure your limits. Zeus weighed the bolt in his hand like a man considering a rock. You stand in the hall of gods, he said. Kneel, and I will forgive your insult. Rimuru did not move. You already threw lightning at me once through Ares, he said. I did not kneel then either. Several gods glanced at each other. Zeus's jaw tightened. Very well. He flicked his wrist. The bolt leaped from his hand toward Rimuru. It was not slow. It cut through the air in a straight line, a streak of white and blue. Rimuru did not step aside. He lifted his hand. Power stirred in his core, the familiar hungry presence of gluttonous king Beelzebub. The moment the bolt touched his palm, the skill opened. The lightning did not splash or explode. It folded in on itself, dragged into a point, and swallowed. For a second, Rimuru saw the structure of the attack. Compressed divine power. Defined edges. Clear start and end. It tasted sharp and bitter, but it was still just energy. Beelzebub chewed and converted it. Magicules settled warm in Rimuru's chest. The hall went quiet. Rimuru lowered his hand. His skin did not even smoke. He looked at his palm anyway. That was decent, he said. A little heavy on the flash. Light on substance. Seal added in his ear. Conversion rate was high. Divine power is efficient fuel. Zeus stared at him. The light in his eyes flickered, then dimmed. You consume my lightning. Yes. With a skill. Yes. Zeus's aura flared. The hall creaked. The air pressed down. Rimuru let a little of his own presence leak in response, just enough to keep the pressure off his body. He did not push it outward. He did not want to crush the attendants or snap the columns. He only refused to bend. Athena sat back a fraction, eyes wide. Hades's mouth tightened at the corners. Hermes watched Zeus with the tired look of someone who had seen his temper many times and did not enjoy it. Hestia stared at Rimuru's hand, then at his face. There was no fear in her eyes now, just something like hope and worry mixed together. Zeus slowly lowered his arm. If I strike in full, he said, this hall will shatter, this mountain will crack, and the world below will burn. Rimuru nodded. Probably, he said. He met Zeus's gaze. You do not want that. I do not want that. So how about we try talking instead of throwing bigger stones? There was a long silence. Zeus's chest rose and fell once deep. You act as if you are above consequence, he said. As if my anger does not matter. Rimuru shook his head. No, your anger matters. You are the one who decides how many people get hurt when you use it. Aphrodite let out a low amused sound. Artemis gave her a quick sharp look, and she went quiet again. Zeus sank back into his throne. Lightning still flickered around him, but it no longer reached for Rimuru. Very well, he said at last. I will not start a war here. Seal pinged a small alert in Rimuru's mind. He did not say he will not start one later. Of course not, Rimuru thought. Zeus steepled his fingers. You claim you fell here by accident, he said. You claim you have people waiting. Yes, then you are alone. No army, no pantheon, no old grudge that drove you to our gates. Rimuru spread his hand a little. Pretty much. Zeus's eyes narrowed. Then you are an unknown weapon parked in my yard. That is worse. Ares made a low approving noise. Zeus raised his voice. You will stay on Olympus as my guest. You will not walk the mortal world without permission. You will answer our questions. There it was. The cage. The word guest hung between them. Everyone in the room heard prisoner under it. Seal summed it up. He wants a controlled environment. Observation period. He will look for weaknesses. Rimuru did not let his face tighten. And if I say no, he asked. Zeus's eyes flashed. Then I call every god, titan, and monster that still answers this mountain and crush you, even if it breaks the world. The threat sat heavy in the air. It was not empty. Zeus had that reach. He had that madness. Rimuru let himself think of Tempest, of Shuna's smile as she fussed over him, of Benimaru's serious face when he planned offenses, of the kids in the city laughing in the market. He did not want pieces of another world drifting past their borders because he had gotten stubborn on a mountain. He took a slow breath. Fine, he said. I will stay for now. I want to understand this place anyway. I want to know what your gods do to the mortals under them. Hera bristled. They worship, she snapped. That is the natural order. Rimuru looked at her. Is it? Athena's fingers tapped again, faster. Her eyes dropped to the floor for a second, as if she was mapping paths. Zeus lifted a hand. Enough. He turned his head toward the low hearth. Hestia, the small goddess, straightened. Flame light from the hearth painted her hair with a warm glow. Yes, brother, you will host our guest. See that he has food and a room. There was a faint edge in his tone. Rimuru heard it clearly enough. Hestia was the least threatening god in the room on paper. Hearth home hospitality. No spears or storms. So she was safe to stand near the unknown weapon. She was also the one least likely to twist orders into chains. Zeus was afraid of that, but he was also bound by old rules of hospitality he could not ignore completely. Hestia bowed her head. Of course. She stood up and smoothed her dress. She did not look like someone who carried any kind of power, but Rimuru could feel the steady pulse of it around her. It was warm and patient, like a good fire that never went out. She walked over to him with small, even steps. Welcome to Olympus, she said quietly. Rimuru smiled. Thank you. Hermes flicked a quick glance between Zeus and Rimuru. Am I done here? Zeus waved a hand. For now. Stay near. That is a polite way to say, keep spying, Seal noted. Rimuru did not answer out loud. Hestia gestured toward a side door. If you will follow me. He dipped his head once to the assembled gods. Thank you for the welcome, he said. Most of them did not answer. Athena gave the smallest nod. Hades met his gaze for a moment and then looked away. Hermes offered a faint half-salute with his staff. Ares glared as if he wanted to tear Rimuru apart with his teeth. Rimuru turned his back on the thrones and followed Hestia out. The side corridor felt calmer. The noise of the throne room faded. Hestia walked in silence for a while, hands folded in front of her. Servants passed them and bowed. They looked more relaxed around her. The air itself felt softer. The ground under Rimuru's feet felt warmer. After a time, Hestia spoke. You should not have thrown Ares in the sand, she said. Rimuru blinked. That is an interesting way to start. She glanced at him with a tiny smile. You shook the floor under their pride. It will not stop moving soon. Seal hummed. She understands social fallout very well. Rimuru shrugged. He was trying to kill a child because it made his altar brighter. Hestia's smile faded. I know, she said. Her fingers tightened together. The hearth sees many things. They stepped out into a smaller courtyard. A simple building stood at the far side. Smoke rose from its chimney. The smell of bread and herbs drifted on the air. Compared to the showy stone and gold of the main palace, this place looked plain. Not poor, just honest. Hestia led him to the door. This is the guest house of the hearth, she said. No weapons are drawn here. No oaths are broken here. She hesitated. No one is hurt here if I can help it. Rimuru felt something in his chest loosen a little at that. Then I think this is the nicest place on this mountain, he said. Her cheeks warmed a little at the compliment. Inside, the house was simple. A central room held a low table and a broad hearth with a steady fire. Cushions lined the floor. The walls were painted with scenes of families, meals, stories told around fires. Small, ordinary things. Doors on the far side likely led to sleeping rooms. Hestia gestured toward the table. Sit. You look tired. Rimuru tilted his head. Do I? Yes. He sat. The cushion gave under his weight just right. Hestia moved like someone who had done this same routine 1,000 times. She took bread from a shelf, cut it, poured a clear drink into 2 cups, brought them over without fuss. She set a plate between them and took the seat across from him. You're not like the others, Rimuru said. She laughed softly. I get that a lot. Seal spoke in a quiet tone. Trust indicator. Hi. Rimuru reached into his own storage and pulled out a small box. I brought something too, he said. Trade. Hestia blinked at the box. What is that? Cream puffs, Rimuru said. A sweet from my home. He opened the box. A soft smell of pastry and cream spread into the room. Hestia's eyes widened. You carry food inside you. I am very practical, he said. She laughed again, more freely this time. He set one of the pastries on her plate. Try it. She picked it up carefully, like it might dissolve if she held it wrong. She took a small bite. Her eyes closed. For a moment she just sat there, chewing slowly. This is warm, she said at last. It is sweet. It is gentle. Rimuru smiled. That is the idea. She took another bite, slower. You said you have a city, she said. A place where mortals are not fuel. Yes. She studied his face. You made it, together with many others. She looked at the fire for a moment. Shadows from the flames moved across her features. There are many hearths in the world, she said. Many homes. They're not all safe. I know. If you stay here, Zeus will try to use you, she said. He will tell you stories of fate. He will tell you that you must keep the order he made, no matter how cruel. She looked at him again. Will you believe him? Rimuru thought of the boy in the arena, hands shaking around a sword he did not want. No, he said. Hestia let out a breath. Good. Silence settled for a moment. It was not heavy, just calm. Rimuru picked up a piece of bread. It was simple, crusty, still warm from the oven. He took a bite. His shoulders eased. For a little while, they traded small things. Hestia told him about children she watched from far away when their parents forgot them. Rimuru told her about goblin children who grew up with proper houses because of him. He kept it light. He did not mention wars or massacres. She did not mention the worst things she had seen in burned homes. At some point, she reached across the table without thinking and brushed a crumb from the corner of his mouth. He blinked. Ah, sorry, she said quickly. Habit. Rimuru felt his ears grow warm. No, it is fine. She withdrew her hand, fingers curling in her lap. You really are not a god, she said. Why? You're too easy to fluster. He laughed. I have had a lot of practice at being weird, not so much at being worshipped. Her eyes softened. I like weird, she said. Seal coughed in his mind. Risk of emotional entanglement rising. Rimuru ignored that. Hestia finished her cream puff and leaned back. You said you want to understand this place, she said. Yes. She looked serious again. Then watch how they treat mortals. Watch who eats and who starves. Watch where the thunder falls and who has to rebuild the houses. She nodded toward the ceiling. Zeus thinks he is the center. He is not. The hearth is. The people are. He nodded slowly. Thank you. She stood. I will show you your room, she said. After that, rest. Hermes will come for you when Zeus calls again. He always does. They walked down a short hallway. The room she gave him was small but comfortable. A bed, A chest. A small window that looked down the mountain toward the world below. Rimuru stepped to the window once she left and pushed the shutter open. The sky outside had gone deeper. Sunset painted the clouds. The world below looked distant, but he could see the faint flicker of cooking fires in villages. Tiny lights. Tiny lives. Seal spoke. We are in a controlled environment with constant divine observation. I know. Zeus will try to keep you in this house or in the hall. He will apply pressure through hospitality rules. He will also test you through others. I know. Hestia may be a genuine ally, Seal said. Her domain aligns with your existing values. Risk. Emotional bias may cloud your decisions. Rimuru smiled faintly at the window glass. You worry too much. That is my function. He watched the world for a while longer. Behind him, the hearth in the main room crackled. Hestia hummed a soft tune as she moved around, cleaning plates, tending the fire. The sound reached his room like a blanket. On the mountain above, he could feel Zeus's gaze like a distant storm. Another presence drifted near the edge of his awareness. Hermes, light and quick, pacing like a restless bird. In the deep places beneath, Hades watched and waited. Rimuru rested his forehead against the cool stone beside the window. New world, he thought. New gods. New rules. Same job. Protect people who cannot fight back. He straightened, rolled his shoulders, and let himself fall back on the bed. For now, he would let them think the cage was closed. Seal was already mapping exits, counting guards, tracking divine attention. Rimuru closed his eyes. Tomorrow, the real work would start. Rimuru woke to the smell of bread again. For a second, he forgot where he was. His body loosened the way it did in Tempest when Shuna dragged him out of bed with the threat of a cold bath. Warm air, quiet crackle of fire, a soft pillow under his head. Then the weight of divine attention brushed the edge of his senses, and the memory of the arena dropped back into place. Olympus, gods on thrones, Zeus with lightning in his hand, Ares in the sand, Hestia at a small hearth in a hall full of people who had never cooked for themselves. Seal spoke in his mind. Heart rate is elevated. You had a disturbed sleep phase. Rimuru pushed himself upright and scrubbed a hand through his hair. Yeah, hard to relax when a sky tyrant keeps staring at the mountain. Zeus's presence sat over Olympus like a heavy cloud you could not see but could feel if you paid attention. It was not a constant crush, more like an occasional press on the skin that reminded you who owned the roof. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood. The room Hestia had given him was simple. Bed, chest, small table. No gold. No carved scenes of victory. Just clean walls and a window with the shutters open to a strip of pale morning sky. He pulled on his cloak and stepped into the main room. Hestia was already there. She knelt by the hearth, feeding a thin branch into the steady flame with the kind of care other gods reserve for crowns. Her orange dress was plain, tied at the waist with a cord. Her hair was pulled back into a loose knot. On the low table she had set bread, cheese, olives, and a clay jug that smelled faintly of herbs. She looked up when he came in and smiled in a way that made the room feel a little warmer. Good morning, Rimuru. Morning. He slid onto a cushion by the table. You did not need to make a full spread, he said. She broke a piece of bread in half and handed it to him. The hearth feeds whoever sits near it, she said. That is not work. That is the point. Seal approved in his quiet way. Her values align with the social stability of your own nation. Rimuru took the bread and bit into it. It was simple and good, crust crackling between his teeth, inside soft. They ate in silence for a little while. Hestia poured him a cup of the herbal drink. It was mild and clean, the kind of thing you could drink all day while talking. After a few minutes, Hestia cleared her throat. Zeus called Hermes to him at dawn, she said. Of course he did. She glanced at the door. I do not know what they said, but Hermes looked tired when he walked away from the hall. That narrows it down. Rimuru snorted. Either Zeus is planning something reckless, or he wants Hermes to lie for him again. Possibly both, Seal said. Hestia lowered her voice even though no one else was in the room. He will test you, she said. He always does that with anything he cannot understand. He will poke until he finds a soft place, or until something breaks. Rimuru tore another piece of bread. Let him test, he said. I will not break. She watched his face for a moment, then gave a small nod, as if she believed him more than she wanted to admit. There was a knock at the door. Quick, light, almost musical. Hestia sighed. That will be him. She rose and went to open the door. Hermes leaned against the frame on the other side, staff balanced on one shoulder, wings on his sandals twitching in tiny restless movements. His hair was a bit mussed, as if he had been running since sunrise. He gave Hestia a polite nod, then looked past her at Rimuru. Morning, guest of Olympus, he said. The council wants you. Already, Seal said. Rimuru swallowed his mouthful and stood. So is this a talk or a trial? Hermes hesitated, then shrugged. They're saying it is a polite audience, which usually means Zeus wants to smile while someone else holds a knife behind the curtain. Hestia gave Hermes a flat look that said she did not find that amusing. He lifted a hand in apology. I will be there too, he added. I am very good at carrying people away from disasters. Rimuru smiled. Good to know. He turned to Hestia. Thank you for breakfast. You're welcome, she said. Her fingers brushed the back of his hand as he passed. It was a small touch, quick and light, but his skin tingled where her hand had been. Do not let them push you into their stories, she said. Say what is true, even if they do not want to hear it. He nodded once and followed Hermes out into the sunlight. The path up to the main hall wound past smaller temples and courtyards. Lesser gods watched them go by. Some stared openly at Rimuru. Others glanced away quickly and pretended to be interested in anything else. Rumors travel faster than Hermes, Seal noted. Hermes walked at an easy pace that did not even make him breathe hard. You upset more than Ares yesterday, he said. The priests are arguing about you already. Some want to call you a demon. Some want to call you a sign. Rimuru watched a group of minor spirits clustered near a fountain. They fell silent when he passed. One of them, a young-looking one with ivy in her hair, gave him a quick, nervous smile and then stared at the ground. What do you call me? He asked Hermes. The messenger thought for a moment. Interesting, he said. That is not a type. It is for me. Hermes smiled without humor. We reached the point a long time ago where everyone on this mountain fits into 3 neat little boxes. Threat, tool, ornament. You do not fit yet. That is rare, Seal murmured. Classification pressure is high. If you stay long enough, he will decide which box he wants you in. The large doors of the throne room stood open when they arrived. 2 divine guards flanked the entrance. They wore armor that shimmered with a faint light, spears upright beside them. They looked tense. Hermes walked in without pause. Rimuru followed. The council was already seated. Zeus in the center, aura like a storm held on a tight leash. Hera at his side, spine straight, lips pressed in a thin line. Athena leaned forward with her chin on her hand, eyes sharp. Ares had a new spear and a sour expression. Apollo was picking at a stringed instrument he had probably brought just to look bored. Artemis watched from under lowered lashes. Aphrodite looked amused as always. The rest sat in their usual places. Hades was there again, standing at the back rather than sitting. His dark cloak pooled around his feet. Hestia was on her low seat by the hearth that burned at the end of the hall. She looked calmer than the rest, but Rimuru could see the way her hands were folded tight in her lap. Zeus raised a hand. The low murmur in the hall faded. Rimuru Tempest, he said. Thank you for answering the call. Rimuru stopped at a respectful distance from the thrones. You did not exactly give me a choice, he said. But sure. Hermes hid a smile behind his hand. Ares muttered something under his breath that sounded like an insult. Zeus ignored both of them. We debated your presence last night, he said. Some called for your destruction. Some argued to bind you. Some suggested we send you back to whatever dark forest spawned you. Rimuru felt more than saw the slight turn of Athena's head at that last part. Hera's gaze flicked sideways for a heartbeat. So that idea had been hers. Zeus rested his hands on the arms of his throne. I'm not yet convinced what you are, he said. But I'm convinced of one thing. He leaned forward. You are dangerous. Rimuru did not bother to deny it. Yes, that is why, Zeus went on, we will test you. He gestured to his left. Athena. Hera, this was your suggestion. Explain it. Athena pushed herself to her feet with smooth control. She wore simple armor today, a breastplate over a short tunic, an owl-shaped clasp at her shoulder. Her gray eyes were bright and direct. Rimuru, she said, you fought Ares and you did not die. You ate my father's lightning, and you did not even flinch. You talk about mortals as if they matter to you. He nodded. They do. Her mouth twitched. Good. Then you will not object to this. She lifted her chin. There's a city on the plain below this mountain that is loyal to Zeus. Its people pay their offerings. They send sons to the arena. They pray when the sky speaks. Rimuru thought of the arena from yesterday. The sand, the blood, the boy and his father moving through the crowd. Athena continued. Recently, a group of raiders has begun to strike the farms around that city. They burn crops, take livestock, steal children. Zeus has sent signs. The priests have called on Ares. Nothing has changed. Ares bristled. Do not blame me for mortal weakness, he snapped. They prayed. They did not train. Athena gave him a flat look that made him sit back down without another word. She looked at Rimuru again. The raiders worship something new, she said. Someone new. They say a stranger will topple Olympus and that the old gods will burn. Rimuru felt Seal stir. That prophecy does not come from us, Seal said. I noticed. Hera's voice slid into the space before Rimuru could answer. Their stories match what you did in the arena, she said. A strange power that shames a god. A face no one has seen before. A name that came with the storm. She looked down at Rimuru as if weighing him. You arrive, and the rebels gain courage. So I'm to blame for raiders now, he said. That was fast. She smiled without warmth. You are an opportunity. We can use you to solve two problems. Athena lifted a hand, as if to slow Hera down, but the queen of the gods went on. You will go to that city as our envoy, Hera said. You will protect the mortals you care about so much. You will crush the raiders who misuse your name, and you will do it under our gaze. Zeus nodded once. You speak of justice, he said. Prove you understand it. You are strong. Prove you can use that strength in a way that serves order rather than tearing it apart. Seal whispered in his mind. This is a test of loyalty and a way to brand you. If you act as their envoy, people will link your power with their rule. And if I refuse, Rimuru asked aloud. Zeus's eyes hardened. Then the city burns. Silence dropped over the hall. Zeus did not shout. He did not raise his hand. He simply stated it like a weather report. Rimuru's jaw clenched. So those are my choices again, he said slowly. Let people die to keep your story clean, or let you use my help to make yourself look good. Hera boomed her voice without volume. Mortals die every day, she said. Plague, war, childbirth. Your concern is sweet. It is also irrelevant. Hestia flinched. Her fingers tightened around each other, so hard the knuckles turned white. Seal spoke very softly. Your anger is rising. Control it. Outburst here will not save anyone. Rimuru took a slow breath. Fine, he said. I will go. Not because I care about your order. Because I will not let raiders hurt people if I can stop it. Athena's eyes eased a fraction. Hades' shoulders loosened. Hermes' grip on his staff relaxed. Zeus smiled a sharp, satisfied smile. Good, he said. Hermes will guide you down. Athena will give you authority in the city. You will act, and we will see if your words carry weight. Ares leaned forward, eyes gleaming. And if he fails, then you can dance in the ashes, Zeus said. Rimuru looked at Athena. You said this was your idea, he said. Was it? She met his gaze without flinching. Part of it, she said. The city would have burned either way. This way it might not. And we learn what kind of ruler you are. He appreciated the bluntness more than Hera's smooth poison. Hestia rose from her low seat. He goes under the mark of the hearth, she said. Zeus frowned. What? Hestia walked forward until she stood at Rimuru's side. The hearth flame thinned and stretched in a single line that followed her like a tame snake. He goes as a guest, she said, as someone who sat at my fire. Anyone who strikes at him without cause breaks the oldest rule we have. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the hall. Zeus's jaw worked. Hospitality was one of the few things even he did not break lightly. The world had old, deep rules, and some did not listen even to thunder. Finally he nodded once, short. Very well, he said, under the mark of the hearth. Hestia dipped her head. She turned to Rimuru and touched 2 fingers to his forehead. Warmth spread along his skin, then sank deeper. Seal recorded the change. New blessing detected. Domain. Hearth. Protection effect. It will influence divine behavior around you. A small line of fire appeared on his forehead for a moment. A simple shape like a tiny flame. It vanished again, but Rimuru could still feel it, like a warm hand resting there. Hestia met his eyes. "Come back," she said quietly. He gave her a small smile. "I plan to," he said. Hermes moved away from a wall and tapped his staff on the floor. "Ready, Rimuru." Rimuru nodded to the room with the bare minimum of respect needed to avoid giving Hera a new excuse to rant, then turned and walked out with Hermes. As they left, voices rose behind them. Hera's sharp tone, Ares' frustrated growl, Athena's measured calm, Hestia's softer murmur. The doors closed. Hermes let out a breath he had been holding. "Well," he said, "that went about as well as it could. You mean I did not get turned into dust?" "Exactly." They stepped out into the bright morning. Hermes rested his staff across his shoulders. "This will not be just some simple bandit camp," he said. "Zeus picked this for a reason." Rimuru raised a brow. "He wants a show." Hermes nodded. "He wants the city to see you fight in his name. He wants you to see that he can touch lives with a word. He wants Athena to weigh you, Hera to hate you, Ares to dream about your skull on his belt. You make this sound so cheerful. It is how this place works." They walked to the edge of the terrace where the mountain dropped away in a sheer fall. The city in the valley lay below them, small and distant. Fields spread around it in neat patches. Thin smoke rose from farmhouses and ovens. Hermes stepped up beside Rimuru. "I can carry you down," he said. "Or we can walk if you like, rock in silence." Rimuru looked at the long rocky trail that wound down the side. "Carry," he said. "I can fall very fast on my own. I would rather do it with someone who knows where the sharp parts are." Hermes grinned. "Hold on then." He placed a hand on Rimuru's shoulder. The world blurred again. Wind roared in Rimuru's ears. For a moment they were nothing but motion and sky. They reappeared on a small hill outside the city. The walls towered above them, stone and wood. People moved along the road toward the gates with carts and baskets. Rimuru shook off the feeling of stretched air and looked around. Hermes adjusted his cloak. "I will stay near," he said. "Not beside you, or they will talk to me instead and ignore you. Call my name if lightning falls in the wrong place." He paused. "Or if you decide to tear a god apart. I like a little warning." Rimuru rolled his eyes. "No promises, but I will try." Hermes vanished in a ripple of air. Rimuru stood alone on the hill for a moment. He could feel eyes on him from the fields already. Farmers pausing, hands still on plows or baskets. Children standing with mouths slightly open. His clothes were still simple. Cloak, plain boots, no crown. The only strange thing about him was the faint warmth on his forehead where Hestia's mark rested unseen. He walked toward the gate. As he moved, he let magic sense spread in a thin sheet, careful not to push too far. Seal whispered data into his mind. City population moderate. Fear level above normal baseline. Prayers directed to Olympus. New cluster of prayers directed to unknown. That cluster matches the direction of the raiders. So people out there already praying to something else. Yes, the guards at the gate watched him approach. Their armor was worn but maintained. Spears leaned against their shoulders. Eyes tired. "Halt," one said as Rimuru came close. "State your business." Rimuru stopped a few paces away and lifted his hands slightly in a peaceful gesture. "My name is Rimuru," he said. "I am here as envoy of Olympus to speak with your leaders about the raids." The guards exchanged looks. One of them glanced up at the sky, as if expecting lightning to confirm that. No bolt came. The older guard wet his lips. "We have had priests before," he said. "They blessed the walls and went home." The raiders did not stop. "I am not a priest," Rimuru said. "What are you then?" Rimuru smiled a little. "Someone who does not like bullies." The guard stared at him, then shook his head as if it did not matter. "The lord of the city will want to see you if you carry a message from Olympus," he said. "Stay close. If you cause trouble, I will pretend I have never seen you." "That is fair." They led him inside. The city was tight and busy. Narrow streets. Houses stacked close. Smell of baking and sweat. Children ran between stalls. Women argued over the price of fish. Men leaned against walls, eyes tracking everything with the alertness of people used to bad surprises. Rimuru saw shrines at intersections and small altars above doorways. Most bore Zeus's symbol. A few had others. Ares, Demeter. One or two had only a small bowl with a simple flame, no carving above it. Hestia, Seal said. Rimuru felt a small flicker of warmth in his chest. The guards took him to a large building near the center. It had columns, but nothing as grand as Olympus. Guards at the entrance. Inside, a hall with a long table. The city lord waited there. He was a man in late middle age, with shoulders that had once been strong and still carried the memory of it. A scar ran along his jaw. His robe was clean, but not rich. He wore no crown, only a simple ring with a carved lightning sign. He stood when Rimuru entered. The guards bowed and withdrew to the sides. The lord looked Rimuru over, eyes sharp despite the lines around them. So he said, Olympus finally sends someone who does not yawn when we talk about burned fields. Rimuru walked forward until they were an arm length apart. As I told your guards, I'm not a priest, he said. Rimuru Tempest. The man clasped his forearms in a firm grip. Philemon, he said, current fool in charge of keeping these people alive. Rimuru liked him immediately. They sat. Philemon waved away empty formality and went straight to the point. The raid started 2 harvests ago, he said. At first it was small. A few goats taken. A barn burned. We called it bad luck. We prayed. We offered more at the temple. Rimuru listened. He felt Seal record every detail. Then they took children, Philemon said. His jaw clenched. They hit 3 farms in one night. They left the parents alive so they could scream at our gates. Rimuru's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. We sent men after them, Philemon went on. Good men. Some came back missing arms or eyes. Some did not come back. The ones who returned said the raiders had strange power. The air grew thick. Their blades turned in their hands. Their horses refused to charge. Magic, Seal said. Not divine. Something else. We sent word to Olympus, Philemon said. The priests told us to show more faith. We held more games. We sent more bodies to the arena. He looked down at his hands. The raiders laughed and hit 2 more villages. Rimuru took a slow breath. Do you know where they camp? Philemon nodded. Roughly. They move, but they return to one range of hills. We sent a scout 2 days ago. He never came back. You mentioned they worship something new, Rimuru said. Philemon's mouth twisted. They shout about a stranger, he said. Someone from another sky who will break the old order. They paint his shape on shields. He gestured to a servant near the wall. Bring the shield. The man hurried away and returned with a round shield. The front was painted with a simple symbol. Rimuru looked at it and frowned. It was not his face. It was not his body. It was a rough shape. A circle for a head, a line for a body, arms spread. Around it, curved lines like waves. No eyes, no mouth. Just a basic human stick figure with power drawn around it. Seal analyzed it. No direct link to your image. It is a generalized sign for someone who stands in the center and pushes power outward. Philemon watched him. You do not recognize it, he said. No. Then maybe your arrival gave them courage, but not their first idea, Philemon said. He leaned forward. Tell me the truth. Are you here to help us, or to collect more offerings for the mountain? Rimuru met his gaze. I am here, so that those raiders stop taking children, he said. What Olympus gets out of it is their problem. Philemon searched his face, then nodded slowly. Good. He stood. I will give you some of our men as guides. They know the land. They are not champions from stories. They are tired and angry, and they have families. Do not waste them. Rimuru stood too. If anyone dies, it will not be because I treat them as disposable, he said. They clasped arms again. Seal spoke. I detect activity outside the walls. Magic sense touched a flicker of gathered energy near the eastern side of the city. People were shouting. Fear. Rimuru turned his head toward the sound. We have company, he said. Philemon swore under his breath and grabbed a spear from the wall. That direction, he said. That is where we keep the grain stores. They ran. The courtyard outside the grain houses was already a mess when they arrived. Smoke hung in the air. One of the smaller storage houses burned, flames licking along the roof. People ran with buckets, forming a line from the well. At the gate in the outer wall, guards fought a group of men in rough armor. The raiders wore bits of stolen gear, leather and bronze mixed. Each had a simple mark painted on his forehead, a crude flame. They did not fight like normal bandits. Rimuru saw it at once. When a guard lunged with a spear, one raider flicked his fingers. The spear tip slid just enough to miss a throat and hit a shoulder instead. When another guard tried to tackle a raider to the ground, his foot struck a stone that had not been there a moment before. He fell hard, and the raider laughed. Reality bending, Seal said. Low level. Narrow range. The raiders shouted as they fought. For the new fire. For the stranger who will tear down the sky. Rimuru moved. Philemon moved with him, but Rimuru was faster. He slipped between panicked citizens, cloaks snapping as he went. The nearest raider turned toward the new presence, eyes bright with fanatic joy. Too late. Rimuru reached out and caught his arm in a grip that looked casual and was not. The raider gasped as his own power fizzled under Rimuru's touch. Seal classified it. Minor conceptual influence. They can nudge probability in a small radius. Cause stumbles. Turn blades a little. The source is external. They draw from a pool that is not divine. Rimuru squeezed just enough to make the raider drop his stolen sword. Stop, Rimuru said. Now. The man grinned back at him through clenched teeth. You're late, stranger, he spat. We will burn the old fields. We will feed the new fire. You will light the way. His eyes were glazed. Not with madness. With faith. Rimuru's stomach turned. He snapped his hand, and the raider dropped, wrapped in sticky thread that glued him to the ground. Another raider raised a hand and muttered something. The ground under Rimuru's feet twitched as if trying to become a trap. He did not even bother to dodge. He pushed a thin wave of magicules into the ground. The warp probability snapped back into place. The earth accepted his authority instead. The raider's eyes widened as his trick failed. Rimuru flicked a finger and put him down with a sleep spell. Around them, the fight stumbled and stopped. The raiders faltered as their small advantages failed. The guards recovered and pressed forward with renewed force. Rimuru did not let them kill everyone. He raised his voice so it carried through the courtyard. Take them alive when you can, he shouted. I need to know who is giving them power. Some raiders chose to throw down weapons. Some fought to the last and fell to the guards' blades. Rimuru did not stop that. He was not here to rewrite every choice. He did, however, step between one raider and a fleeing child. The man had broken through the line and charged for the small figure near the corner of a house, knife raised. Rimuru moved without thinking. He shifted into his slime body for a heartbeat, blue gel rushing forward in a wave. The knife sank into him without cutting anything that mattered. He flowed around the raider and snapped back into human form behind him. One hand chopped the back of the man's neck. The raider crumpled. The child stared up at Rimuru with wide eyes. Go inside, Rimuru said. Stay with your family. The child nodded and ran. Seal noted calm. You chose not to kill. If they force my hand, I will, Rimuru said silently. But not when I can end it clean. The fire on the grain house roof still burned. He flicked a palm toward it and sent a cool wave of water flying. It hit the flames and smothered them in a cloud of steam. People around him stared. Philemon arrived at his side, breathing hard, spear tip red. You are no priest, he said again. No. They looked over the mess together. Several raiders lay bound. A few lay still, eyes glassy. Some guards held bloody arms or leaned on companions. No children in the courtyard lay dead. Rimuru counted that as a small win. Philemon pointed at one of the bound men. That one shouted orders, he said. Rimuru walked over. The man glared up at him from the ground. He was younger than Rimuru had expected. Maybe 20. Hard eyes. Scars that did not match his age. Rimuru crouched. Who gave you this power, he asked. The man spat at his feet. The old sky is rotting, he said. You cannot stop it. The new fire will eat it. Rimuru let the insult slide. Do you even know who this new fire is? The raider smiled with cracked lips. He is coming. He will break the peaks. He will unseat the thunder. He will burn the false. He laughed suddenly, a raw sound. Maybe it is you. Seal murmured. He truly does not know. The belief is shaped, but not informed. Someone else whispers in their dreams. Rimuru stared at the man for a while. Then he stood. Lock them up, he told Philemon. Not in the arena. Somewhere with walls. No more beatings for now. Philemon nodded and gave orders. As the guards dragged the prisoners away, the people in the courtyard shifted. Some looked at Rimuru with open gratitude. Some with fear. Some with both. He felt eyes on him from above. He glanced up and caught a flash of silver on a rooftop. Hermes stretched out on a ledge, watching with his chin in his hand. Hermes raised 2 fingers in a lazy salute. Rimuru turned his gaze higher. The sky was blue and plain. No storm heads. But he could feel Zeus's attention anyway. Athena's too, like invisible threads tied from the mountain to his shoulders. He looked back at Philemon. We need to reach that camp, he said. This attack was a probe. The Lord nodded. I will gather my best, he said. Rimuru shook his head. Gather men who know the land and can follow orders, he said. I will handle the rest. Philemon almost protested, then saw something in Rimuru's face and closed his mouth. As you say, they walked back toward the hall together. Children watched them from doorways. One little girl held a rag doll with a tiny painted lightning sign. Her mother pulled her back as Rimuru passed, eyes uncertain. Inside the city hall, with the doors shut and guards posted, Philemon sank onto his chair with a groan. I am too old for this, he muttered. Rimuru leaned against the wall. You are still moving, he said. That is enough. Philemon snorted. You talk like someone who has seen too many old men break. Rimuru's gaze drifted to the window. More than I wanted. There was a soft sound of sandals in the doorway. Athena stepped into the hall. She wore travel gear now, light armor and a short cloak. No owl sat on her chair this time. Instead, her hair was braided back tight. Philemon scrambled to his feet and bowed low. Lady Athena. Rimuru straightened. You came down yourself, he said. She looked him over. Of course, she said. If I send someone and they fail, Zeus blames me. If I come and we fail, he still blames me, but I get a better look at why. That held more dry humor than most of her previous lines. She glanced at the marks of smoke on Rimuru's cloak, the scratches on his sleeves. Her eyes flicked to the window, where people still moved around the grain houses. You move quickly, she said. Raiders with probability tricks, he said. Someone gives them low-grade reality nudges. They can make people stumble and blades miss. Nothing strong. Enough to make mortals die more often. Her mouth tightened. We did not grant that, she said. That means one of three things. She held up a hand, ticking them off on her fingers. A forgotten god woke up and is playing with toys. A titan finds a crack to poke through. Or something from your side, reached in first. Rimuru shook his head. I did not bring any pet cults, he said. I have enough trouble with what I know. Seal confirmed. No skill in your core shows remote influence of this type. Athena believed him. Rimuru could see it in the small relaxing of the muscles around her eyes. She stepped closer to the table. We go to the camp today, she said. This afternoon, while they think they still have the advantage. Philemon frowned. Is that wise, lady? The men are tired. Athena looked at him. The raiders are bold because nothing has checked them, she said. Break that once, and the pattern changes. Wait too long, and fear eats your city. She turned to Rimuru. You want to know how we treat mortals? Watch today. He held her gaze. I will. She smiled very faintly. Good. Later, when the sun had started its slow fall, a small column rode out from the city. Philemon at the front on a sturdy horse. 10 mounted guards beside him. 20 men on foot behind. Not an army. Enough to look serious. Rimuru walked at the front on the ground. He did not need a horse. His steps did not slow. Athena moved near the middle, on foot as well. Her stride was steady. She carried a spear and a round shield painted with the head of a snake-haired monster. Hermes drifted somewhere above, mostly unseen. Rimuru could feel him. A flicker on the edge of magic sense, hovering like a cautious bird. Fields gave way to rough ground. Low scrub, stones hidden under brush. The range of hills Philemon had mentioned rose ahead. Seal whispered measurements. Ambient magic is higher here. Something nudges space. Trace signatures match those in the city attack. The men around them grew quiet as they walked. Sweat darkened tunics. Hands flexed on spears and sword hilts. One young guard near Rimuru tried to hide the way his fingers trembled. First time, Rimuru asked. The guard jolted. First time outside the walls, he said. My father wanted me in the arena. I said no. So I got this. He flushed as if he had said something shameful. Rimuru gave him a small nod. You made the better choice. The guard looked at him again, eyes searching for mockery. He found none and stood a little straighter. The path narrowed as they entered a rocky cleft. High walls on both sides. Seal sounded a quiet alarm. Expect an ambush in 3 breaths. Rimuru shifted his stance. The attack came on the second breath. Stones tumbled from above, loosened by unseen hands. Arrows whistled down. The air thickened, trying to make feet stick, trying to make spears point the wrong way. Men cursed. Horses reared. Rimuru moved. He threw up a broad barrier over the column, a clear dome that arrows struck and dropped from with a steady patter. The falling rocks hit it and rolled aside, bouncing harmlessly into the scrub. The pressure in the air pushed against his barrier like invisible fingers. It warped a little, then settled as he fed more power into it. On the cliffs, raiders shouted. Some stared in panic as their tricks failed. Others snarled and pulled back bowstrings again out of sheer habit. Athena's eyes flicked wide for a heartbeat as the barrier formed around her. Then she adjusted immediately, calling orders. Shields up. Tight formation. Do not break, she shouted. Philemon bellowed commands as well, voice rough. The men formed a bristling ring under the dome, eyes flicking from the cliffs to their strange protector. Rimuru released the barrier in a sudden outward pulse. The dome shattered into a wave of force that slammed into the cliffs. Raiders lost their footing and tumbled down the slopes with curses and yells. Some hit the ground and did not get up. Others groaned and tried to rise. Rimuru flicked thin lines of magic. Threads wrapped around wrists and ankles, pinning the ones who still moved. The air above the cleft shimmered. Seal spoke. Stronger source detected. Rimuru felt it too. A point of wrongness, sharper than the raiders, perched on a ledge above. A figure stepped into view. He was taller than the others, with a lean frame wrapped in a dark cloak. His face was hidden by a simple mask with no features. No eyes, no mouth, only a blank surface. He raised one hand. The air around his fingers twisted. That is the one who whispers in their dreams, Seal said. The masked figure spoke. His voice carried even though he did not shout. You move fast, stranger, he said. The old sky must be afraid to send you already. Rimuru stepped forward up the path until he stood at the front of the column. You are the one telling children they will be safe if they burn their neighbors, he said. The man laughed softly. Fear is a tool, he said. They already had plenty. I just showed them where to aim it. Athena moved to stand beside Rimuru. Her spear gleamed. Who are you? She asked. He tilted his head. A friend, he said. A messenger. The first small spark of a bigger flame. Rimuru frowned. You keep talking about fire, he said. You know the goddess of the hearth is listening. The man's head snapped a little at that. Good, he said. She should hear which way the world will turn. The old order will fall. The new flame will sit where Zeus sprawls now. He spread his arms. There is already a crack. A slime walked into your hall yesterday and ate lightning. Nothing stays the same after that. Rimuru felt cold settle in his stomach. You know who I am, he said. Of course, the man said. I dreamed of you before you arrived. Something out there pushed you. Something out there pushes me. Seal hummed. External factor confirmed. Neither Zeus nor this man is the root. They are branches. Rimuru took a step up the slope. You give power to raiders to make a point, he said. You let them steal children. That is not change. That is cruelty dressed as a plan. The masked figure shrugged. Change is never polite, he said. The old gods were never kind either. Why should the new be softer? Athena's jaw tightened. You think you can tear down a pantheon with stolen tricks? She said. The man tilted his head toward her. I think I can make your father panic, he said. That is enough. Panic cracked stone. He threw his hand out. The air around Rimuru and the column twisted hard. Seal barked a warning. He is trying to rewrite simple physical rules. Gravity slid sideways for a moment. The world tilted. Men staggered as their feet tried to leave the ground. Horses screamed and reared. Rocks that should have stayed on the slope jumped into the air. Rimuru planted his foot. No, he pushed his will outward. Magicules surged. The false rule shattered. Gravity snapped back to normal. The floating rocks dropped. Rimuru flicked his fingers and turned them to dust before they could crush anyone. The masked man stiffened. You refuse the new law. Rimuru took another step. I refuse a cheap trick that hurts people to make you feel clever. He gathered power in his palm. Not a black sphere this time. That would be overkill. He formed a narrow line instead. A thin lance of compressed water and magic that hummed quietly between his fingers. He threw it. The masked man tried to twist space away from it. For a second, the lance bent, path warping like a branch in wind. Seal corrected the trajectory with a tiny adjustment. The lance snapped straight, and struck the rock under the man's feet. Stone exploded. The figure lost his balance. For a moment, he hung in the air, cloak flaring. He tried to twist gravity again. Rimuru wrapped the area around him in his own field and locked it. The man fell. Rimuru jumped. He met the falling body in the air, grabbed the cloak, and slammed him onto a flat stretch of slope hard enough to drive breath out of his lungs. Dust rose around them. Rimuru put a knee on the man's chest and pressed one hand to his mask. "Stay down," he said. The figure writhed. Energy pulsed under Rimuru's palm, trying to twist away, but Seal clamped down on it, analyzing as it flared. "The power source is not internal," Seal said. "It channels from a point beyond this world, through a pact. If we push too hard, we may alert the source." Rimuru gritted his teeth. "Fine. Then we go careful." He poured his own energy in, not as a blast, but as a steady, smothering weight. The borrowed power in the man bucked and kicked, then dimmed. The raider leader groaned. "The old sky sent a monster," he whispered. Rimuru thought of the boy in the arena, of Hestia's small house, of Shuna's smile somewhere in another world. "I am not a monster," he said, "but I'm done watching people like you play God." He ripped the mask off. The face beneath was ordinary. Brown hair, pale eyes, bloodshot with strain. Lines at the corners of his mouth that spoke of too many nights making bad choices. No demon horns. No glowing eyes. Just a human who had decided that being the first servant of a new flame was worth any amount of blood. The man stared up at the sky. "You cannot stop it," he whispered. "The crack is there. Power spills through. The stranger comes." Rimuru narrowed his eyes. "What stranger?" The raider smiled with cracked lips. "Not you. Bigger. Empty and full. He will eat gods and slime alike." Seal went very still. "Concept matches several high-risk entities," he said. "None confirm." Rimuru's fingers tightened in the man's cloak. "Where do you hear him?" "In the fire," the man breathed. "In the dreams. In the spaces between the stars." His eyes rolled back. The faint connection Rimuru had felt under his hand snapped. "He is gone," Seal said. The external source cut the link. Rimuru cursed under his breath. Behind him, the others climbed up the slope. Athena reached them first, breathing a little harder, but still controlled. "He is alive?" she asked. "Barely," Rimuru said. Someone else pulled the strings. Athena stared down at the unconscious man. "This is worse than Zeus hoped," she said. Rimuru looked at her. "You knew it might be something like this." She gave him a tired half-smile. "I hoped it would be simple. I am rarely that lucky." She straightened. "We take it back," she said. "We show Zeus. We show the others that this is more than bandits and stolen goats." Rimuru nodded. Philemon and his men reached them, faces streaked with sweat and dust. The young guard Rimuru had spoken with earlier looked both terrified and proud. "Is it done?" he asked. "For today," Rimuru said. They bound the raider leader and the others they had captured. They burned a few of the small shrines the raiders had built on the hills, simple piles of stones with crude painted symbols. Rimuru watched the smoke rise. Seal spoke quietly. "You know Zeus will use this." "I know," he said. "He will say he needed me. He will say the danger proves his power." Athena walked beside him as they started back toward the city. "You did well," she said. He glanced at her. "You are hard to impress." "I am," she said. "That is why this bothers me." Her eyes flicked up toward the mountain. "He will either cling tighter to his throne, or he will throw a tantrum big enough to crack the world." Rimuru smiled without humor. "And you?" "I will try to keep the board from flipping," she said. The journey back was quiet. Men were tired. Some ached in ways they would not admit until they saw their families. When they reached the city gates, people lined the walls and streets. They cheered when they saw the raiders bound and the leader tied to a pole. Their cheers grew louder when Rimuru walked in front, cloak dusty and eyes steady. They did not know who he was yet, but they knew someone had stood between them and fire. Rimuru felt uncomfortable with the sound. Seal picked up the shift. "You dislike open praise." "I dislike what it can be turned into," Rimuru said. He thought of how easily Zeus could point at this and claim credit. How fast priests could write songs about the wise king who sent his strange servant to save the faithful. Inside the city hall, Athena wrote a quick report in clean, sharp handwriting on a clay tablet. Hermes appeared in the corner without warning and read over her shoulder. He whistled softly. "So, It is not just dirty bandits, he said. No, Athena said. She turned to Rimuru. I will take this to Olympus, she said. Zeus will want to speak with you again soon. Rimuru nodded. Tell Hestia I am still in one piece, he said. Athena's mouth softened for a moment. You tell her, she said. I have no intention of stopping her from scolding me too. Hermes stepped closer. I can carry you back, he said. Or you can stay here tonight and see what the raiders did to these people up close. Rimuru looked at Philemon. Will you be safe if I go? The Lord gave a short, rough laugh. Safer than yesterday, he said. We will keep the prisoners in a locked cellar and double the guards. Go tell the gods what you saw. You speak more plainly than I ever could. Rimuru clasped his arm again. I will be back, he said. He stepped over to Hermes. The messenger laid a hand on his shoulder. The world jumped. They landed in front of Hestia's house. The goddess stood just outside the door, as if she had been about to come down the path to meet them, and stopped when they appeared. Her eyes scanned Rimuru from head to toe. You're dusty, she said. He looked at his cloak. Better than bloody. She stepped closer and reached up to brush dirt from his cheek with her thumb. You're also tired, she said. He let out a breath he had not noticed he was holding. A little. Hermes cleared his throat softly. I will go play messenger, he said. Try not to start a new war while I am gone. He vanished again. Hestia took Rimuru's hand and tugged him inside. Sit, she said. Eat. Then tell me. He sat at the low table. She put food in front of him, and only after he had taken a few bites did she prompt him with a small nod. He spoke. He told her about the raid at the grain houses, the marks on the raiders, the probability tricks, the masked man on the hill, and the way his power felt wrong. Hestia listened without interrupting, hands wrapped around a cup. Her eyes darkened at the parts about stolen children. When he mentioned a man's words about a stranger who would eat gods and slime alike, her fingers tightened. There have always been things outside the sky, she said quietly. Old rules, old hungers. We built Olympus as a kind of wall. It was never a perfect one. Rimuru rubbed his forehead where her marks still tingled. If something wants to break through, he said, this world is in the way. She nodded. And so are you. Their eyes met. He thought of Tempest again, of Veldora's grin, of people who had chosen to trust him. I have stopped worse than raiders, he said. Hestia reached across the table and took his hand. I know, she said. Her thumb brushed his knuckles. His heart beat a little faster. You walked into our hall and refused to kneel, she said. You stood between a child and a blade. You carry a piece of home that does not worship thunder. She leaned in a little. For the first time in a very long while, I feel something new on this mountain. He swallowed. Hope. She smiled, small and sincere. Yes. For a moment the world narrowed to the fire in the hearth and the warmth of her hand in his. On the mountain above, Zeus read Athena's report and scowled at the mention of an outside source of power. Hera whispered plans that tasted of chains. Ares sharpened his new spear and dreamed of another chance. Athena planned 3 moves ahead and then 3 more. Hermes perched on a roof and watched the sky, waiting for the next crack to show. In the valley, Philemon sat with his tired men, poured them wine, and promised them that their children would sleep easier, at least for one night. In the small guest house by the hearth, Rimuru Tempest sat with a goddess who had never stopped caring about small fires and small lives, and realized that whatever the stranger in the dark wanted, he was not going to let it take this world without a fight. Rimuru did not remember falling asleep. One moment, he was at Hestia's table with the smell of bread and smoke and cream in the air. The next, he was blinking awake on the guest bed, boots kicked off at some point, cloak folded over a chair in a way he definitely had not done himself. Seal spoke at once. You were unconscious for 3 hours and 12 minutes. No intrusive divine presence entered the house. Hestia adjusted your blanket twice. Rimuru cleared his throat. You're getting very detailed. Observation requires detail. He pushed himself upright. Muscles complained a little in that dull way that meant he was not really hurt, just tired. His core felt full, but not strained. Divine lightning, bandit tricks, and a mountain full of egos would do that to anyone. He splashed water from the basin on his face, smoothed his hair, grabbed his cloak, and stepped into the main room. Hestia sat by the hearth, mending a tunic with small, neat stitches. She looked up as he came in and relaxed just enough that he noticed she had been tense. You slept harder than you think, she said. He rubbed the back of his neck. Sorry. I do not mean to pass out on your bed. She smiled. That is what beds are for. Sit. Eat something before Hermes arrives and drags you into another mess. She was right. Hermes arrived before Rimuru had finished a loaf. The knock on the door was quick and familiar. Hestia let him in. Hermes slipped inside with a gust of cooler mountain air. His cloak fluttered, sandals barely made a sound, and the look on his face said he had already argued with Zeus at least once since sunrise. Morning, he said. You survived bandits and weird probability tricks. Congratulations. Rimuru chewed and swallowed. Let me guess. Now I get a prize. Hermes laughed once. If you call being summoned to a council about the end of the world a prize, sure. Hestia's hands stilled on the fabric in her lap. You told them, she said. Hermes nodded. Athena did not water it down. Zeus did not like the part about an outside source poking at his realm. Hera liked it even less. He glanced at Rimuru. They want you in the hall. Hades asked for you, which is new. Rimuru wiped his fingers on a cloth and stood. Hades, he said. The quiet one who watched everything and said almost nothing. Seal reminded him. You noted that his energy signature matched deep earth and bound souls. He interacts with what happens to mortals after death. Hestia rose too. Hades is not like the others, she said. He does not chase prayers. He counts what is left when stories end. Her expression tightened. That does not mean Olympus listens when he speaks. Hermes shifted his weight. For once they might. Nobody knows more about things that do not belong here than he does. Rimuru fastened his cloak. Then let us go before Zeus decides to test something else with lightning. Hestia stepped close and straightened the clasp at his throat with quick fingers. Remember, she said quietly, the mark of the hearth is on you. They can snarl and glare, but if they break hospitality outright, the old rules will answer. He felt the warm sensation on his forehead pulse in answer. I will keep that in mind, he said, on impulse. He bent his head and brushed his lips against her knuckles before she could pull her hand back. She froze, eyes wide, then flushed warm enough that the fire suddenly felt like it had competition. That is a dangerous habit, she muttered. He smiled. So is making good bread. I like dangerous habits. Hermes rolled his eyes. Can we go before Hera walks in here and decides this looks fun to ruin? They stepped out into the sunlight. The sky above Olympus was bright and clear. The storm that Zeus carried around like a cloak hummed quietly somewhere on the edge of perception. Hermes kept pace beside Rimuru. He is jumpy, Hermes said. Zeus. He hides it under thunder, but this is the first time in a long while he has heard about something from outside his sky pushing inside. Rimuru kept his hands in his cloak pockets. How many times has that happened before? Hermes thought. Not often. Titans were one thing. They were already here. Some old sea things tried once. We pushed them down. There was a crack in the far north a long time ago. Hades closed it. He glanced sideways. This feels worse. Seal agreed. Structure of the borrowed power implies a deliberate, focused sender, not a random leak. The big doors of the throne room stood open again. Rimuru walked in with Hermes at his shoulder. The air inside buzzed with more tension than yesterday. Zeus sat forward on his throne, elbows on his knees, fingers steepled. Lightning traced thin lines over his knuckles. Hera sat rigid beside him. Athena stood rather than sat, arms folded, tablet of clay in one hand, as if she had just finished another report. Ares paced like a cage hound at the foot of the stairs, armor clinking. Apollo did not have his instrument today. That alone said a lot. Artemis leaned on her bow. Demeter twisted a strand of wheat between her fingers until it broke. Aphrodite watched everything with the cool interest of someone who knew fear ruined the pretty lines in a face. Hestia took her usual place by the hearth as Rimuru entered. Her eyes met his for a quick second and then slid back to the fire. At the back, Hades stood in his familiar shadowed spot. Today his dark cloak hung a little heavier. Zeus raised his hand. Rimuru Tempest, he said. Rimuru stopped at the bottom of the steps and gave the smallest bow he could get away with. You called. Zeus's eyes narrowed briefly at the lack of flourish. Then he let it go. Athena has reported that the raiders drew power from a source beyond this world. Zeus said. But the man you caught spoke of a stranger who will eat gods. He said slime too, Rimuru added. Very equal-minded. Hermes choked on a laugh. Hera glared at him. Zeus ignored both. Hades believes there is more we can learn from your prisoner, Zeus went on. Not with chains or fire, but with his soul. Hades stepped forward. The room seemed to cool by a few degrees as he moved. Not in a cruel way, more like shade on a hot day. The raider still lives, Hades said. The link that carried power into him is cut, but the mark in his soul remains. I can follow that mark where others cannot. He looked at Rimuru. I wish you to come with me. Rimuru blinked. To the underworld. Hades nodded once. Your presence will help in 2 ways. You have already touched this outside power. Your core holds residue my realm does not recognize. And if the source tries to reach again while we look, you are better suited to block it than any of us. Seal approved. His plan is logical. Underworld environment will magnify traces and give us a safer vantage than on the surface. Safer is a strange word for a place full of dead souls, Rimuru thought. He considered Hades. The god did not look eager. He looked like someone who had noticed a leak in a dam and did not like what that meant for the valley below. Zeus spoke before Rimuru could answer. Hades will take you under my authority, Zeus said. You will not roam his realm without his consent. You will not pull souls from his keeping. You will not tamper with the chains that bind titans and older things. His tone made it clear he did not care about laws in the abstract. He cared about control. Rimuru lifted a hand, palm open. I do not have any interest in stealing your dead, he said. I have trouble enough looking after the living. Hera cut in sharp. What you say now and what you do later may not match, she said. You should swear. She looked at Hades. On the sticks. Zeus shifted slightly. The air in the hall tightened. An oath on the sticks bound even gods. Breaking it came with a cost the sky could not cancel. Seal spoke in a flat, warning tone. The river Styx enforces conceptual contracts. Damage for violation would reach your core assets, not just this body. Rimuru did not like being told what to do. He liked being forced into old cosmic rules, even less. Before Zeus could agree, Hestia stood up. Wait, she said. All heads turned toward the small goddess by the hearth. Her voice stayed calm, but Rimuru heard the steel under it. He bears my mark, she said. He came as a guest. The old rules of hospitality already bind how we treat him. If you drag him to the river and wrap chains around his tongue, you spit on those rules. Zeus's jaw tightened. We talk of all rules now, not just yours. Hestia looked at him, eyes steady. The river Styx has its place, she said. Swearing on it turns a pledge into a cage. You do not ask your guests to walk into cages. Hera hissed. You're too soft, sister. Soft is not the same as blind, Hestia replied. She turned to Rimuru. Would you give your word without me forcing you to do it on a river? She asked. Rimuru met her gaze. I already said what I intend, he said. I have no reason to tear apart Hades' realm. I am here to stop a threat, not start 5 new ones. He looked at Hades. You know the taste of lies, he said. Underworlds usually do. Does that sound false to you? Hades' gaze did not waver. No, he said simply. He turned back to Zeus. I will accept his word as given. I do not need the river every time I ask for help. A silence stretched. Zeus's fingers tapped the arm of his throne once, twice. Lightning flickered faintly around his shoulders and then died. Very well, he said at last. Go. Find what you can. But understand this, Rimuru. His eyes locked on Rimuru's. If this outside thing thinks it can use you as a crack in my sky, I will break it and anything it hides behind. Rimuru felt the weight behind the words. It was not bluster. If you try to break the wrong thing, you will crush the mortals first, he said. That is why I am going. Zeus's nostrils flared. Athena, he snapped. Provide Hades with your written findings. Hermes, you will act as link between sky and underworld. He flicked his hand. The conversation was over. Hades inclined his head, then turned and walked toward a side passage seldom used. Rimuru followed, Hermes at his side. Hestia watched them go, hands clenched and eyes bright in the firelight. The corridor to the underworld entrance descended gently at first, then more steeply. Torches lined the walls, but they did not burn with normal flame. Their light was pale and steady, casting little heat. Hermes spun his staff idly as they walked. You are aware most mortals would kill for a chance to see what is at the bottom of this path, he said. Rimuru snorted. Most mortals also know better than to walk into a room full of lightning. Curiosity has limits. Hades spoke without looking back. The dead are not as interesting as the living imagine, he said, but the rules that keep them where they belong matter. When those rules crack, everything else feels it. They reached a broad stone door set into the mountain. Symbols Rimuru did not recognize carved along its edges. Hades placed his hand flat against the center. Open, he said. The carvings flared with dull light. The door shuddered and swung inward. Cold air flowed out. It smelled of earth, old incense, and the faint, dry scent of dust that had forgotten sunlight. Rimuru stepped through after Hades. Hermes came last, glancing up once at the slice of blue sky before it vanished as the door shut. The path beyond was smooth rock underfoot, sloping down. The light changed from the pale torches to a soft glow that seemed to come from the stone itself. You do not use normal fire here, Rimuru said. It disturbs the dead, Hades replied. Rimuru wondered what his own people would think of this place. Goblins who had used to fear the dark, now living in a city full of lamps and laughter. Here, the light was careful and quiet, like no one wanted to bother anyone. The path opened onto a vast cavern. A black river cut through it in a wide curve. Its waters did not lap or froth. They moved with slow, heavy steadiness. On the near bank, pale shapes blurred back and forth, flickering like candle flames in windless air. On the far side, pillars of stone rose into darkness. The sticks, Seal said. Do not fall in. Hades stepped onto a narrow stone pier that jutted into the river. A boat waited at the end. A figure in a hooded cloak stood in it, hands on a long pole. Sharon, Hades said. The boatman inclined his head in silent greeting. He will carry us across. Hades said. You do not need a coin. I pay his wages. Hermes snorted. You would too. They boarded. The boat held their weight without a creak. Sharon pushed off. The water around them did not splash. It accepted the boat like another shadow. Rimuru watched the souls along the bank. Some clustered in little groups. Some drifted alone. None looked solid. None spoke loud enough for living ears. They feel you, Seal noted. Their pattern shifts as we pass. Hades followed his gaze. Most of them forgot their names on the way, he said. It is kinder that way. But they still know when something new walks through their sky. Rimuru felt a few thin touches at the edge of his senses. No harm, just curiosity that had forgotten its shape. On the far bank, they stepped off the boat and walked along a path that hugged the river. A three-headed hound lay across it, blocking the way. Cerberus was larger than any normal animal had a right to be. Each head rested on its paws, eyes half closed. Chains thick as a man's torso wrapped around his shoulders, sunk into the rock. At the sound of footsteps, 3 sets of eyes opened. They glowed faintly in the dim. The left head growled low. The middle one sniffed the air. The right one tilted slightly, curious. Rimuru resisted the urge to reach out and scratch behind an ear. Friend of yours, he asked Hades. Guardian, Hades said. He keeps what should not leave from leaving most days. He knows you by my mark. He stepped closer and placed a hand on the central head snout. He is with me, Hades said. Cerberus huffed. The left head gave Rimuru a suspicious look. The right one sniffed his cloak and sneezed at the smell of mountain wind and bread. Rimuru held out a hand. I do not bite, he said. Usually, the right head leaned in and bumped his palm. The middle one allowed a brief scratch between the eyes before pulling back with a quiet woof. Hermes smirked. You get along with everything, he said. It helps when you do not try to sacrifice villagers to them, Rimuru replied. They passed. Cerberus lowered his heads and closed his eyes again, chains humming softly. Beyond the Guardian, the path split. One way led down, where a deeper cold rose. The other led to a flatter stretch where stone pillars stood in a circle. Hades took the second path. We do not need Tartarus yet, he said. We start with the mark on your radar. The stone circle held a wide, shallow basin in the middle. It was dry. Place your hand here, Hades said. Rimuru did. Hades placed his hand on the opposite edge. Hermes took position just outside the circle, staff ready, eyes sharp in a way Rimuru had not seen before. This is not a spell you should use without understanding, Seal said. Underworld focus enhances soul-level tracing. Hades spoke first. This basin is for looking at what is tied to death, he said. We do not drag the dead back to the living. We do not drag the living here. We look at the marks and follow them in thought. Rimuru nodded. Show me how to help. Hades closed his eyes. Think of the raider, he said. The one you pinned to the ground. The one who spoke of fire. Call up the shape of his soul. Rimuru focused. He remembered the weight under his knee, the feel of borrowed power bucking under his palm, the ordinary face under the mask. He let those images settle at the front of his mind. Hades whispered something under his breath. The empty basin filled, not with water, but with a thin layer of gray glow. It spread from the edge inward until it met Rimuru's fingers. The light changed. A shape formed in the basin. Not a clear face, more like an outline of a person made from fog. Threads of darker color wrapped around the chest and head. Mark of the outside source, Seal murmured. Hades opened his eyes. Good, he said quietly. You hold them well. He reached out with his free hand and touched one of the dark threads. It trembled and tried to pull away. Show me where you came from, Hades said. The scene in the basin shifted. Rimuru saw dark hills under a moonless sky. Fire burned in a circle of stones. The raider stood there, younger, hands outstretched. A voice spoke from the flames. The words blurred, but the tone was clear. Smooth, patient, promises. The thread Hades held tugged away from the fire, toward a place beyond the image. Hades's brow furrowed. Further, he said. The vision pulled back. The hills dropped away. The fire became a small point in a larger darkness. Stars pricked the sky and then snapped into strange patterns that did not match anything Rimuru knew. The thread stretched toward a gap between 2 points of light. Seal tightened their grip on the edge of Rimuru's senses. We are at the outer boundary of this world structure, Seal said. Beyond that is raw space between worlds. Hades's voice went lower. Show me, he said. The thread slipped through the gap. For a moment, Rimuru saw nothing. Just a stretch of black that did not belong to any night sky he had seen. No air here. No ground. No up or down. Then something moved. Not closer. Not further. It changed without shifting place, like a crack widening in a wall you only see once you look at it straight. The thread from the raider's soul vanished into that change. Rimuru felt a presence brush against his awareness. It was not heat or cold. Not anger. Not joy. It was a simple, raw notice. Someone is looking back, Seal said. The gray glow in the basin darkened at the edges. Pull away, Seal warned. Now, Rimuru tried to step back from the connection in his mind. Something held for a split second, like a hook snagging cloth. You taste like home. A thought that was not words brushed his core. Rimuru shoved. Beelzebub stirred, hungry. Rimuru let a thin layer of its hunger slide over the connection. Not to eat, just to block. The presence flinched. Hades's eyes snapped open wider. Back, he said sharply. The gray light in the basin shattered. Rimuru sucked in a breath and jerked his hand back. Hermes stepped forward at once, staff raised, but the circle was already dark again. The cavern felt different. The air itself held a faint tremor, as if the underworld had taken a breath and not yet let it out. Hades's face was set in lines Rimuru had not seen before. That was close, he said. Rimuru flexed his fingers. They tingled as if he had grabbed a live wire barehanded. What was that, he asked. Hades shook his head once. Old, he said. Older than Olympus. Older than these rivers. Not one of the things we bound in Tartarus. Something that walks between worlds and 8 pieces of empty space until it learned it was hungry. He looked at Rimuru. It noticed you. Seal agreed. It recognized my pattern from previous outer world travel. It may associate you with other cracks. Rimuru frowned. So I'm a walking target flag now. Nice. Hermes blew out a slow breath. Zeus is going to hate that, he said. He already hates a lot of things, Rimuru said. This will just move me higher on the list. Hades stepped back from the basin. The link in the raider is severed, he said. The mark is fading faster now that we touch the source. That is something. It means whatever is out there does not have a clear door in through him anymore. One crack patched, Seal said. Many left. Rimuru looked toward the deeper path that led down. You said we did not need Tartarus yet, he said. Hades followed his gaze. We might sooner than I hoped, he said. As if the word had been a cue, the ground beneath their feet shivered. Not much. Just enough that dust drifted from the ceiling. Rimuru went still. That was not me, he said. Seal agreed. Seismic activity. Localized shift beneath the lower levels. Source: unknown. Hades lifted his head, eyes narrowing. "We are not alone," he said. He turned and started down the deeper path at a fast pace. Rimuru went with him. Hermes cursed under his breath and followed. The temperature dropped as they descended. The glow in the stone walls dimmed, replaced by a thin red light that pulsed from cracks in the floor. Seal spoke, more alert. "Structural integrity of the prison levels is under stress. Something is pushing from both sides." Sounds reached them now. Distant metal against metal. A low rumble that might have been a growl or stone grinding teeth. They came out into a massive chamber lined with pillars. In the center, a vast pit dropped into heat. Chains as thick as towers hung down into it, glowing where they met whatever was bound below. One of those chains had cracked. The link where it met the rock at the rim glowed with a wrong light. Not heat, not divine. The same kind of dark shine Rimuru had felt in the basin when the outside presence had brushed them. A shape moved at the bottom of the pit, too big to be seen clearly from this height. Hades swore, very quietly and very clearly. "That chain hold one of the old ones," he said. "Not a titan. Something that slept before even they did." Rimuru stepped closer to the edge and peered down. The air above the pit shimmered with heat. A blast of raw malice rolled up from below as whatever was bound there felt the loosening of its chain. "The outside thing is testing locks," Seal said. Hermes moved to Hades' side. "Can you mend it?" he asked. Hades' jaw was tight. "Not alone," he said. "The crack carries foreign weight. It eats at my binding." He looked at Rimuru. "You could devour what does not belong," he said. "Can you strip that infection without feeding the thing below?" Rimuru studied the crack. A band of wrongness seeped from the broken link, trying to spread along the stone. It felt like the residue in the raider, but heavier. "I could try," he said. Seal added details in his ear. "You must set Beelzebub to filter. Eat only the foreign power. Reject the base divine and primordial energies." "If I slip," Rimuru thought, "I feed an ancient monster." "You have not slipped yet," Seal said. Rimuru stepped to the very edge. Heat licked his face. If he had been a normal human, his skin would have blistered. It was just uncomfortable. He reached out and placed his hand on the cracked metal where it met the rock. Foreign power pulsed against his palm, trying to spread. It tasted like the presence they had touched in the basin, but more concentrated, like someone had taken a piece of that space between worlds and hammered it into chain. He opened Beelzebub carefully. The skill's hunger slid along the surface of the crack, sniffing, testing. Rimuru controlled it with tight focus, like holding back a flood with a net. This part, he told it wordless. Just this. The foreign energy responded, trying to surge up into him, maybe thinking it had found another path inward. He let Beelzebub bite. The outside power flowed into his core, fought, and then dissolved as Seal broke it down. Magicules spread through his body, clean and familiar. Slowly, the wrong glow faded from the chain. The crack stopped widening. Below, whatever lay bound roared once, a muffled sound like the earth complaining. The chains glowed brighter in response, old bindings reasserting themselves. Rimuru held on until the last whisper of foreign power was gone. Then he cut the flow and stepped back. His head buzzed. His palm tingled. But he was still himself. Hades exhaled. "It holds," he said. "For now." He placed both hands on the chain and murmured a command. New stone flowed up from the pit's edge, wrapping around the cracked link, sealing it in fresh rock. "This will not stop another push," Hades said, "but it buys us time." Hermes' face was pale. "If that thing woke," he said quietly, "it would not care about Zeus's throne. It would eat mountains," Rimuru said, "then cities, then the rest." Seal confirmed. Power estimates suggest a level able to erase continents if unbound. Rimuru felt anger rise, sharp and clear. Someone out there thought this was a good toy to play with. He looked at Hades. "You keep how many of these things tied up?" "Too many," Hades said. "Not all are this strong. Some are just hungry shadows. We keep them all down because someone must." He shook his head. "The outside force is clever. It did not try to rip the chain. It sent just enough power to weaken the seal and see what happened. Now it knows there is something heavy down here," Rimuru said. Hades met his eyes, "and it knows there is someone up there who can eat its power." The message went both ways. Rimuru flexed his fingers again. Seal. Any trace of that thing left in me. None at critical levels, Seal said. Beelzebub processed all foreign energy. Residual signatures are low and will fade. Hermes shifted his staff from hand to hand. We go back up now, he said. Zeus needs to hear this before he decides the biggest problem is still the slime that refused to kneel. Hades nodded. We're done here for now, he said to Rimuru. My thanks. Rimuru frowned. You are thanking me for doing the bare minimum, he said. I am thanking you for not making it worse, Hades replied. That is rarer than you think. They climbed back up together. The path felt steeper on the way out. The glow in the stone walls slowly shifted back to the pale underworld light. The sound of the sticks returned, steady and dull. Cerberus lifted one head as they passed, sniffed Rimuru once, then snorted and laid his chin back down. Sharon ferried them over with the same silent efficiency. On the far bank at the great stone door, Hades placed his hand against the rock again. We will talk to Zeus, he said. He'll want to roar and threaten to tear apart the first thing he sees. Athena will tell him how bad that idea is. Hera will tell him how to turn this into a chain for you. He looked at Rimuru carefully. What will you do? Rimuru thought of Hestia's small house, Philemon's tired face, the young guard on his first march, the child in the arena clutching a sword. I will keep doing what I came here for, he said. Stop idiots from using other people as shields. Stop monsters, whether they have thrones or chains. Then go home. Hades gave a slow nod. Be careful they do not turn you into a story they can twist before you leave, he said. The door opened. Cool mountain air washed in. Hermes squinted at the sudden brightness as they stepped out. I will run ahead, he said. Ease Zeus into this before all three of us walk in at once. He sprang into the air, wings beating once, twice. Then he was gone up the path in a blur. Hades followed at a slower pace. Rimuru kept step with him. You do not hate mortals, Rimuru said. Hades considered the path ahead. I do not have time, he said. I see what is left of them. How they lived matters more than how they died. He glanced at Rimuru. Why did you ask? Because everyone up there talks about them like pieces, Rimuru said, except Hestia. Philemon down below. The raider who thought burning farms would make the world better. They all bleed in the middle of those games. Hades made a small sound that might have been agreement. Olympus sits high, he said. It forgets what it stands on. They reached the main terrace. The big doors of the hall were closed this time. Voices rumbled behind them. Hermes popped into existence beside them, as if he had never left. He is not throwing lightning yet, he said. That is the good news. Rimuru tilted his head. And the bad? Hermes grimaced. You want to hold a feast. Rimuru stared. You call that bad? Hermes shook his head. Here, feasts are not about food. They're about oaths, alliances, who sits where, who drinks what. He wants to show the mountain and half the world that he has you at his table and under his roof. Seal chimed in. Symbolic control. Public narrative. Hades sighed. He will turn what we tell him into a story of his strength, Hades said. Even if we tell him that something below almost woke because of something outside. Hestia appeared at the far side of the terrace, walking toward them with her dress gathered in one hand so she would not trip. Relief flickered across her face when she saw Rimuru upright. You're back, she said. Rimuru smiled despite everything, still in one piece. Your mark helped. She reached up without thinking and touched the spot on his forehead where her blessing sat. Her fingers were warm. The underworld tried to drag him into old cracks, Hermes said cheerfully. Something outside tried to say hello. Hades and Rimuru told it to mind its own business. Hestia's eyes widened. You spoke with it, she said. Touched, Rimuru corrected. It noticed. We noticed back. Hades can explain the details. Hades nodded. Later, he said. He looked at Rimuru. Rest if you can before the feast, he said. Once you sit at that table, everyone will tug at you. He walked toward the hall, cloak trailing, to face Zeus with truth and the kind of patience only someone who had seen every ending could have. Hestia watched him go, then turned back to Rimuru. Come on, she said softly. She took his hand and led him back toward the little house by the hearth. He let himself be pulled. For a few moments, he could smell bread and herbs again instead of river and chains. As they stepped inside, she did not let go of his hand. You went down to where the old bindings sit, she said. to wear the dead weight. You came back. You helped Hades hold something that should never wake. Her voice trembled just enough for him to hear it. You keep doing that, he said, watching everyone else and forgetting you can ask for help. Her eyes met his. Are you offering? He did not joke this time. Yes. She took a breath and stepped closer, so close he could feel the warmth from the hearth behind her and the warmth from her skin in front of him. Then let me do something selfish for once, she said. She rose on her toes and kissed him. It was not the kind of kiss bards would write about. No dramatics. No thunder. Her lips were soft and sure. His hand lifted almost on its own to rest at her waist, careful not to pull too hard. For a moment, the mountain, the river, the outside hunger, Zeus's temper, all went quiet. But she stepped back. Her cheeks were bright. That was probably unwise, she said. Maybe, he said. He smiled. I am getting used to unwise. She huffed a small laugh that sounded half like a sob. Sit, she said. Eat. Then we faced the feast. He sat at her table again. She put food in front of him. The fire crackled steadily. Outside, on the high terrace, Zeus planned a feast where he would pour wine and pretend control, while something older than him pressed fingers against chains in the dark below, and something stranger than him waited in the space between worlds, now aware that a slime and a hearth and a god of the dead stood in its way. The day of the feast started like any other on Olympus, which only meant that everything important was hidden behind polite smiles. Rimuru woke before the bells. Seal had nudged him out of sleep with a quiet word in his mind. Not urgent, just steady. You said you wanted time to think before politics begin, right? Thanks. He sat up, rubbed his face, and listened. Outside the window of Hestia's guest house, the mountain was already awake. Servants hurried on the stone paths. Somewhere further up, he heard music as minor gods tuned their instruments. The air smelled of fresh bread and flowers. Festivals smell the same everywhere, he thought, just with more lightning here. Hestia was already in the main room, of course. She moved between the hearth and the table with familiar ease, placing cups, setting out bread, checking a pot of stew that steamed over her fire. You are early, she said when he stepped in. Hermes said the feast does not begin until the second bell. He shrugged and took his usual place at the low table. I wanted to pretend this was a normal morning for a bit. She looked at him closely, then poured him a drink. You went to the underworld yesterday, spoke with things that do not belong, and came back in one piece, she said. That is already not normal. Her tone was light, but he heard the worry under it. He picked up his cup. Hades helped, he said. So did Seal. And the chains. His gaze flicked to the coil of metal resting on the shelf above the hearth. It looked simple at first glance. For links of dark iron, fused together and wrapped in a band of hardened stone. No glow, no dramatic aura, just a weight on the shelf. Hestia followed his eyes. Hades gave you that. Rimuru nodded. A sample of the binding he uses on the oldest things, he said. He sealed it so it will not wake anything up on its own. Seal can copy the pattern if I need to. It is not supposed to be a weapon, but Hades is a realist. Seal spoke, calm as always. Underworld binding logic can restrain divine energy if applied correctly. Probability of success increases if the target is already weakened or distracted. So, best used on someone who thinks they are in control, Rimuru said. He did not say Zeus out loud. He did not have to. Hestia sat across from him. Her fingers traced the rim of her cup. Hera came to see me last night, she said. Rimuru looked up. That sounds like the start of a story where something breaks. It almost was. Hestia's mouth tightened. She asked me to support a change, she said. No more thunder at the top. A new order under her guidance. She said Olympus needs a queen who cares about law more than ego. And did she mention how many people she is willing to break to get that? Hestia gave him a look. You already know the answer. Seal supplied the summary anyway. Hi. Rimuru sighed. What did you tell her? That I'm tired of watching mortals burned because a god wanted to make a point, Hestia said. And that I would not trade one kind of cruelty for another dressed in a new robe. She tilted her head. She also asked about you. Of course she did. Rimuru tore off a piece of bread. What did she want to know? If you could be pointed, Hestia said, like a weapon, or a story. She thought she could use you to bind Zeus, then bind you next. Rimuru chewed slowly. At least she is honest about planning to stab me in the back. Hestia shook her head. She is honest with me because she thinks I have no teeth. He reached across the table and covered her hand with his. You have more spine than half the mountain, he said. She smiled a little at that. Eat, she said. Big fights go better on a full stomach. They ate in relative quiet after that, the kind that felt comfortable rather than strained. Hestia's hearth burned steady. Outside, the sounds of preparation grew louder. By the time Hermes arrived, Rimuru had finished most of the bread and felt at least physically ready. The messenger god did not bother to knock this time. He swung the door open and stepped in with the kind of careless grace only someone who had never tripped in his life could manage. Good, you are awake, he said. I did not want to drag you out of bed in front of everyone. Though that would have been funny. Rimuru raised a brow. How bad is it? Hermes leaned his staff against the wall and spread his hands. You are the guest of honor at the Feast of the Eclipse, he said. Everyone will be there. Zeus wants to show you off. Hera wants to watch him fall. Athena wants data. Ares wants a rematch. The minor gods want a new story to tell their followers. He paused. Hades wants everyone to stop poking the cracks in reality. That one I agree with. Rimuru glanced at Hestia. And you? She met his eyes. I want this night to end with fewer corpses than it could, she said simply. Seal whispered in the back of his mind. Conflict probability has risen since yesterday. Hera has accelerated her plans. Hermes nodded, as if he had heard the thought. She is moving, he said. She visited Poseidon and Apollo after she left you. People who know how to read the air are already talking about a storm that has nothing to do with the sky. Rimuru stood and reached for his cloak. Then we go. Hestia rose as well and stepped close to fix the clasp at his throat, even though it did not need fixing. Remember, she murmured, the mark of the hearth is on you. He tipped his head down enough to press a quick kiss to her temple. I remember. Her cheeks warmed. She swatted his chest lightly. Save your dramatic moves for the hall, she said. Go. They stepped out into bright sun. Hermes walked beside Rimuru on the path up to the main hall, staff resting across his shoulders. The mountain had changed for the feast. Garlands hung between pillars. The air was full of music and voices. Minor gods and spirits moved everywhere, carrying trays, lighting lamps, arguing about seating. Hermes pointed with his chin as they passed a large terrace. That is for the mortals who were invited, he said. Priests, heroes, a few kings. Zeus likes an audience when he flexes. Rimuru saw rows of tables like a smaller copy of the hall inside. Men and women in fine clothes already sat there, eyes full of awe and fear. The main hall doors stood wide open. Inside, the throne room had been transformed. The thrones remained at the far end, raised above the rest, but long tables now ran along the sides of the hall. Lamps hung from the ceiling on invisible threads, casting steady warm light. The hearth at the far end burned brighter than usual, its flame high but controlled. The gods had taken their seats. Zeus at the center, Hera at his side, crown perfect, smile even more so. Poseidon sat to Zeus' right, sea green eyes sharp. Apollo lounged across from Athena, golden and restless. Ares was further down, already drinking. Demeter, Artemis, Aphrodite, the rest, each in their place. Hestia moved quietly to her usual seat by the hearth, a little to the side of the main display, present but never central. Hermes led Rimuru forward. Announcement time, he said under his breath. He tapped his staff on the floor and raised his voice. Rimuru Tempest, guest of Olympus. Talk died at the tables. All eyes turned toward Rimuru as he walked down the center of the hall. Minor gods leaned forward. Some of them had only heard stories of the lightning eater so far. Rimuru stopped at the bottom of the steps before the thrones. He did not bow deeply. He inclined his head just enough to be polite. Zeus smiled down at him. It did not reach his eyes. Rimuru Tempest, Zeus said. Today we celebrate victory and order. You have helped us guard both. Rimuru could have argued with that, but this was not the place. I helped keep an old thing asleep, he said. I would rather call that survival. A ripple of uneasy amusement moved through the hall. The word old had landed harder on some ears than others. Zeus raised his cup. Survival is the first victory, he said. To survival. The gods echoed him. Cups lifted. Wine flowed. Hermes slipped away to his place near the side. Athena watched Rimuru with that same thoughtful gaze, her fingers resting on the stem of her cup, untouched. Rimuru took his seat at a small table near the front, close enough to the main table to be part of the show, far enough to be a step below the thrones. Hades stood near a pillar behind the main table, as if he had simply appeared there and might vanish again at any moment. The feast began. Food arrived in waves. Roasted meat, fruit, bread, fish that still smelled of the sea. Servants moved in well-practiced patterns. Music filled the edges of conversation. Rimuru ate enough to be polite and to keep his energy up. He listened more than he spoke. The talk at the high table drifted around him. Demeter complained about farmers planting the wrong crops in the wrong season. Ares bragged about past wars. Apollo made a joke at his own expense that made his twin roll her eyes. Hera watched everything. Every time Zeus lifted his cup, she saw. Every time a god laughed too loudly at a small joke, she noted who they glanced at first. Seal tracked lines in the air. Hera is measuring alliances, he said quietly. Poseidon leans toward her. Apollo is restless. Athena stays seated in the middle, neither aiding nor blocking. Zeus basked in the attention, as always, but Rimuru saw the tightness around his eyes. He felt the way lightning hummed under the skin of the mountain, held just in check. The first sign that the night would tip came when Hera rose. "My husband," she said, her voice smooth and clear. "Lords and ladies of Olympus, guests from below, tonight we mark a rare alignment." The sky and the shadow met, and the world did not end. She lifted her cup toward Hades and Rimuru in turn. The lord below closed a crack in his prison. Our guest from another sky helped him. For once, we did not answer danger with games and blood in the sand. We answered it with thought. A few gods shifted uncomfortably at that. Zeus laughed. "Are you praising me, wife?" he asked. "I am the one who sent them both to do that work." Eros' smile did not change. "Of course," she said. Rimuru felt Seal's attention sharpen. "Her pulse is up," Seal said. "She is about to move." Hera turned to the hall. "Yet that is not the only threat we face," she said. "Cracks below are one thing. Cracks above are another." She lifted her cup high. "Tonight, let's seal both." On some cue Rimuru did not see, Poseidon and Apollo moved. Poseidon surged up from his seat, power rolling off him in a wave that smelled of salt and storms. Apollo rose in the same breath, light gathering in his hands. Zeus shifted, hand reaching for the master bolt at his side. "Now," Seal said. Rimuru was already moving. He flicked his hand toward the shelf by the hearth. The small coil of underworld chain vanished from its place with a pop of displaced air and appeared in his grip. Hestia startled, then pressed a hand to her chest as if steadying a jump in her heart. Rimuru did not look back. He poured power into the sealed links, calling up the pattern Hades had shown him. The metal warmed, then glowed dull red, not like fire, but like old iron remembering the forge. Hera raised her free hand. A slender scepter appeared in it, topped with a small golden shape of a peacock. She pointed it at Zeus. "Now." Poseidon slammed his trident into the floor. Water erupted from the cracks, wrapping around Zeus' legs. Apollo flung chains of pure light at his arms. Rimuru threw the underworld chain. It split into a spread of glowing links as it flew, each piece moving like a living thing. They wrapped around Zeus' chest and shoulders, sank into his aura, then contracted. Zeus roared as divine energy flared and then snagged. The air crackled. Lightning that had been humming under the surface snapped and tumbled, then sank into the chains, trapped. The hall shook. Wine spilled. Minor gods cried out. Mortals on the lower terrace saw light flash in the windows and ducked. For a breath, it worked. Zeus' aura dimmed. The storm cloak around him thinned. He strained against invisible bonds, muscles tight. Hera stepped forward, eyes bright with something fierce and hungry. "For too long you have ruled from fear," she said. "You have burned cities to make a point, broken oaths for pleasure, thrown children into cages to feed your own stories. It is over, Zeus." She raised the scepter higher. "By the will of Olympus, I strip you of your throne." Rimuru watched her carefully. Seal spoke in his mind. Her focus is not on the chains or on the threat from outside. It is on power consolidation. Zeus laughed. It started as a low sound in his chest, then grew. You really think I did not see this coming? He said. He twisted his shoulders. The chains flared as they fought to hold. For a heartbeat, they seemed to tighten. Then a different power pushed back. The chains groaned. Cracks of harsh white light ran along them. They had been built to hold old things that hated the world, powered by Hades' deep, steady will. They had not been built for a god who had spent ages convincing the sky itself that he was its will. Zeus flexed. The chains shattered in a burst of sparks. The shock threw Poseidon back a step. Apollo's light chains snapped like threads. Eros' eyes widened. Impossible, she whispered. Zeus turned his head and looked at her. All humor left his face. You used my fear as bait, he said softly. You invited my enemies to my table. You tried to turn my guest into your blade. Lightning gathered in his hand, cold, not forced, as if the sky came because it knew no other choice. The master bolt appeared, humming with power that made the air thin. Zeus turned to Rimuru. You, the word cracked. You helped bind me. Rimuru met his gaze. I helped stop something from breaking free below, he said. This was your wife's plan, not mine. Hera stiffened at the word wife. Zeus shifted his grip on the bolt. You came from outside, he said. Ever since you arrived, cracks have spread. Raiders whisper about strangers in the dark. Old chain strain. My own blood plots. You bring chaos. Seal murmured. His reasoning is emotional, not logical. Rimuru shrugged lightly. I did not bring your dysfunction, he said. I just refuse to pretend it smells like roses. A few minor gods choked on their drinks. Eros' lips twitched in spite of herself. For an instant, the moment might have tilted toward tense humor instead of raw violence. Then Hera moved. She thrust her scepter toward Rimuru. The peacock symbol flared with sickly gold light. Guards, she cried. He has served his purpose. Seize him. The floor around Rimuru glowed. Sigils burned in a circle at his feet. Above, sections of the ceiling slid open with a grinding of stone. An adamantine cage dropped toward him, heavy bars etched with complex symbols. So she had planned this too. Rimuru sighed. Of course. He could have dodged, teleported, turned into a slime, and flowed away. Instead, he let the cage fall. It slammed around him with a crash that shook the near tables. Actors sometimes let the trap close so they can see all the strings. Seal analyzed the metal at once. Adamantine alloy reinforced with divine law. It is meant to suppress energy use, not physical movement. Rimuru set his hands on two bars. They thrummed under his palms. Outside the cage, Hera smiled. You thought you could use him alone? She said to Zeus. I brought him here. I set him on the board. Now I remove him. This is how we win. Zeus' grip tightened on the master bolt. Win, he echoed. His aura surged. The next heartbeat did not feel like normal time. Seal spoke in his mind. Warning. His power has shifted into a war state. Zeus' body blurred. Light poured off him, not just from the bolt, but from every inch of his skin. His form expanded, swelled, until he stood not just as a man on a throne, but as a giant of light that filled the high end of the hall. His eyes crackled white. When he moved, the air shook. Jupiter Optimus Maximus form, Seal said. Conceptual channel. He is drawing not only from his own core, but from the belief of his worshippers. The mortals on the lower terrace fell to their knees as that weight hit them. Some screamed. Some prayed louder. Hermes staggered, then caught himself on his staff. Athena braced one hand on the table and narrowed her eyes, already calculating. Hades watched with a face like stone. Zeus lifted the master bolt. Hera, he said. She took a step back. Wait. Too late. The bolt flashed once. The world became white. Rimuru moved on instinct. He forced magicules into a barrier around Hestia and the minor gods near the hearth, shaping Uriel into a dome that wrapped them in a tight field. The white radiance washed over it, bright enough that he saw the bones in his own hand for a moment. When it faded, the hall was different. A smoking crater marked where Hera and Poseidon had stood. The floor there had simply ceased to exist, stone gone, turned to a fine dust that drifted down into a hole that looked far deeper than it had any right to be. The air above it still shimmered. Hera lay at the edge, body broken, crown shattered beside her. Her eyes were open and empty. Poseidon's trident lay twisted, its metal half melted. The sea god himself sprawled in a heap of scorched flesh. Demeter screamed. The sound tore from her throat, raw and high. Ares froze, cup halfway to his mouth. Color drained from his face in a way Rimuru had never seen. Apollo stood rigid, his golden glow flickering. Zeus lowered his hand. He looked almost calm. "Traitors," he said. "The first piece is removed." He turned his gaze on the cage. Rimuru looked back at him from behind the bars. The dome around the hearth flickered as Uriel held. Hestia pressed her hands to the inside of the barrier, eyes wide, breath shallow. Rimuru gave her the smallest nod he could manage. "Still here." Zeus stepped down from the wrecked steps of his throne. "You're next," he said. He gestured. The bolts around the cage flared. The symbols on the bars lit. For a moment, Rimuru felt pressure, like hands pushing on his shoulders, trying to force him down. "Authority of the king," Seal said. "Conceptual order to kneel." It uses his status as ruler of the sky to treat everyone under his domain as subjects. Rimuru felt his knees tense. Seal spoke again, voice cool and precise. "Override." The pressure snapped like a weak rope. Rimuru straightened. "No," he said. Zeus stared at him. "Kneel," he commanded again. "No." Rimuru looked at him through the bars, eyes steady. "I kneel to no one." The words cut through the hall. The mortals on the terrace shivered. Some glanced up, hope and terror mixed. Athena exhaled very slowly. Zeus' jaw clenched. "So be it," he said. He lifted the master bolt again, higher this time. The power gathering at its tip felt different. Colder. Deeper. Seal sounded worried for the first time since Rimuru had arrived in this world. "He is not aiming at flesh," Seal said. "He is loading a conceptual strike. Designation. Erasure. Target. You. Erase me." The idea tasted bitter even inside his own mind. "If that hits," Seal said quietly, "you will not just die. You will not have ever arrived. The cracks you touched will close in the worst way. Reality will fold around the lack." Rimuru felt something low in his chest go very still. Options. He could run. Escape the cage. Teleport, hide. Zeus would throw the bolt anyway. It might tear through the mountain, the city below, the underworld, everything. He could take it without fighting back and hope his core was stubborn enough to hold. Risk losing everything he had built. Or, Seal spoke the third choice. "We use it," Seal said. "We show him what real nothing is." Rimuru swallowed. "You mean, Azathoth?" He had never used that skill fully in front of other gods. He had called on pieces of it, touches of void, but never let it fully awake in a place like this. The outside thing could feel it, he thought. "Yes," Seal said. "It will see. It already knows you are here. The only question is whether you protect this world now, or let it burn to keep your secret." Zeus shouted, "Be undone." He hurled the master bolt. The air screamed. Light tore across the hall in a straight line. No arc, no drift. It moved like a decision, absolute and final. Rimuru dropped all pretense of restraint. "Fine," he said. In his core, a door opened. Void God. Azathoth. Everything went silent for him. The bolt hit. The world did not explode. It did not shatter. The bolt entered the space Azathoth opened and vanished. Not absorbed in the way Beelzebub ate matter. Not deflected. It simply ceased to be, stripped down past energy, past light, past the idea of lightning. Its path, its impact, its consequence, all gone. For an instant, the gods saw the shape of the thing that had swallowed their king's pride. It was not a shape in the normal sense. It was the outline of an absence, hanging in the air around Rimuru like a wound in reality. The edges of it wriggled in a way that hurt mortal eyes. Even for divine ones, it was wrong. Athena staggered and caught the table hard enough to crack it. Ares fell to one knee, breath coming fast. Apollo clutched his head. For a brief moment his light went out entirely, leaving his face pale and human. Hades did not move, but a line of sweat ran down his temple. Hestia pressed her forehead to the inside of the barrier, as if anchoring herself to the hearth's steady warmth. Zeus stared. "What did you do?" he whispered. Rimuru looked at him from within the slowly shrinking outline of void. "You wanted to erase me," he said. "I showed you what erasing really looks like." Seal pulsed calmly, containment holding, adjusting field so the outside presence cannot trace every detail. Rimuru let the door in his core drift toward almost closed, enough to hold the memory of the bolt as fuel, not enough to let Azathoth spill further. The cage that Hera had dropped on him was another thing. Its symbols flickered, then went dark. The metal groaned. The bars that had looked indestructible a moment ago now seemed like simple metal trapped between two pressures that did not care about them. Rimuru set his hand on one and pushed. It bent like soft clay. He stepped through the gap. Zeus took a step back for the first time since Rimuru had seen him. "Guard!" Zeus roared. The elite guard of Olympus moved. They had been waiting. Men and women in polished armor, their bodies wrapped in divine energy, weapons blessed in past wars. Some had eyes like hawks, some like wolves, some like storms. They threw themselves at Rimuru in a wave. Merciless triggered. It was not a sound, and yet it echoed. Rimuru felt his own mercy fold back for a moment, like a hand drawn away from a wound. Seal shifted into a different mode, calculation turning from survival to elimination. "Threats that have chosen the path of lethal force," Seal said. "No need to hold back." The first guard reached him, spear thrust aimed at his heart. Rimuru sidestepped. His hand snapped out, caught the shaft, and turned the momentum. The man flew across the hall, hit a pillar, and crumpled as his armor cracked. Two more came in from the sides, blades glowing. Rimuru lifted his palm. Black motes of compressed, nothing drifted out, small and precise. They struck weapons, armor, exposed skin. Wherever they hit, things vanished. Not entire bodies. He was not trying to erase people from history. Just enough for them to fall. A sword hand disappeared at the wrist. A chunk of armor gone, leaving a guard exposed to his own forward rush so that he hit the floor hard and slid. Another went for his back. Rimuru did not even turn. He shifted his weight, let the blade scrape across a thin barrier, then kicked backward. The guard flew into the remains of a table and stayed down. Magic flared from the side. A guard hurled a blast of fire that would have incinerated a lesser being. Rimuru looked at it and flicked two fingers. The fire folded in on itself and turned into a small sphere of heat that he popped like a bubble. He moved through them like water. Every time a blade came close, it hit a barrier or found nothing. Every time he struck, someone fell. He did not need to kill to make his point. A few he let collapse with shattered weapons and broken pride. A few he hit harder when he saw the set of their eyes, the ones who would keep coming if left with breath. The hall filled with the sounds of bodies hitting stone, of metal clattering across the floor, of groans. Ares watched, stunned. His hand tightened on the hilt of his own sword without him noticing. Hermes stood against the wall, white-faced. Athena watched with her jaw set and her mind racing, counting moves, measuring. Hades simply observed. If this was a call, he would see the souls later. At the hearth, Hestia held her breath until her lungs hurt. Rimuru finally stopped moving. The last guard slid to a halt at his feet, sword broken, helmet dented. He groaned and did not try to rise again. Silence fell. The only ones still upright in the center of the hall were Rimuru and Zeus. The mountain itself felt like it was holding its breath. Zeus' giant form had dimmed. He was still taller than any man, still wrapped in light, but it flickered at the edges. His chest rose and fell hard. Sweat beaded on his skin. The hand that held the master bolt shook very slightly. Rimuru stood 10 steps away, cloak torn, hair a little messy, clothing dusted with stone and ash. His breathing was steady. Magicules still hummed under his skin, eager. Azathoth slept again, but the memory of its single bite lingered. "You still have your throne," Rimuru said quietly. "No one has taken your name. You can stop." Zeus' lips peeled back from his teeth. "Stop," he spat. "You walk into my sky, you eat my lightning, you throw my guests into chains, you break my guard, and you tell me to stop." He lifted the master bolt one more time. "I am Zeus." His voice carried the weight of every prayer that had ever said that name with fear or faith. Rimuru felt Seal at the back of his mind, ready. "We can take him now," Seal said. "Eat the bolt, then him claim the sky." It would solve much. Rimuru thought of Hestia's hand in his, of Hades' steady watch, of Athena trying to build something stable out of a nest of snakes. He thought of mortals on the terrace, of Philemon in the city below, of the raiders who had believed a whisper in the dark. He shook his head. Not yet, he said under his breath. Out loud, he answered Zeus. You are a god on a mountain, he said, loud and bright. That is all. He stepped forward. The master bolt flared. The air between them crackled. The feast of betrayal had turned into something else entirely, and everyone in the hall knew that whatever happened in the next breaths would change their world in a way no prophecy had warned them about. For a second nobody moved. Zeus stood at the far end of the ruined hall, light crawling over his skin, the master bolt raised. Rimuru stood 10 steps away, dust on his clothes, the last echoes of the void still humming in his chest. The air between them was so charged that the lamps along the walls flickered. Seal spoke inside his mind, voice steady. He is damaged. Authority draw has drained a large part of his core. You are fresher. Rimuru did not feel fresh. His head buzzed from too many different powers pulling in different directions. Azathoth slept again, but the memory of the nothing he had opened was still there, quiet and heavy. Zeus took the first step. The floor cracked under his heel. Enough talk, Zeus said. He was on Rimuru in an instant. No build-up, no visible wind-up. One blink, he was at the far end of the hall. Next blink, his fist was a white blur. Rimuru crossed his arms. The punch hit his guard with a sound like a mountain splitting. Stone shattered. The shock threw broken tables sideways. Mortals on the terrace cried out and dropped flat. Rimuru slid back 3 steps, boots grinding over torn marble, then stopped. His arms tingled. The skin on his forearms smoked. Strong, Seal said. Not stronger than you now. Rimuru dropped his guard and shook off the sting. You really like punching, he said. Zeus bared his teeth. I like winning. Lightning crawled up his arm into his fist. The next punch carried a bolt with it, a straight line of blinding white. Rimuru stepped sideways. The bolt carved a trench through what was left of the floor and blew out part of the far wall. Daylight lanced in. Air rushed through the fracture, pulling smoke and dust with it. Outside, on the terraces and in the streets below, people saw a spear of light punch through the side of the palace. Priests dropped their offerings. Soldiers grabbed children and shoved them under shields. Inside, Rimuru kept moving. He did not match Zeus blow for blow. That would have meant playing the Sky King's game. Beautiful explosive clashes, endless damage, nothing learned. He used what he had. Spatial motion bent around his thoughts. He stepped forward and sideways at the same time, short hops that turned the hall into a broken pattern of distance and angles. One breath he was 3 steps to the left of Zeus. Next breath he was above him, cloak snapping. Zeus cursed and swung the master bolt like a club. It was not just a weapon. It was a piece of the sky given shape. Each swing dragged light and sound with it. When it missed, it ripped grooves in the stone and sent shards flying. Rimuru deflected one of those swings with a barrier that flared gold and blue at the edge, the sign of Uriel straining. The impact rang in his bones. He shifted the field. Seal, he said inside. Take readings. Already doing so. I am mapping his use of worship lines. Zeus moved again. He was fast but not clean. Rage made his movements sharp but also wasteful. He committed everything to each attack. Rimuru led him. He used short bursts of speed from his own body rather than always leaning on space. He ducked one strike and drove a knee into Zeus' ribs. The impact made the Sky King grunt and stumble. That felt good. Around them, gods watched from the edges. Athena stood behind a shattered section of table, eyes narrow, mind working. He is not trying to overpower Zeus, she thought. He is cutting away options. Hades watched from the pillar where he had taken cover when the first bolt had gone wild. His gaze never left the 2 figures at the center. He felt the chains below the mountain and the river beneath them, checking for cracks. They held. For now, Hestia pressed her palms flat to the inside of the barrier around the hearth. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She wanted to scream at both of them to stop. She did not. The world had reached a point where words were not enough. Zeus roared and thrust the master bolt forward. A cone of thunder blasted out, raw sound and light. The shot front hit Rimuru square in the chest. He let it. He set Raphael Seal's calculations to the front and opened his core just enough to drink. Sound became pressure. Pressure became energy. Energy folded into magicules and vanished inside him. The blast that should have thrown him through 3 walls left him standing with his cloak rippling. He tilted his head. "That all you have?" he asked. The line came out dry, not cocky. Laughing in the face of a storm was one thing. He had done that already. Now he needed Zeus angry in the right way. Zeus snarled, "You think this is a game?" He drew deeper. Rimuru saw it. The way his energy reached not just into the clouds above, but into something thinner and more scattered. The lines of faith that tied him to every temple and every whispered prayer. "Authority draw," Seal said. "Too steep. He is burning belief as fuel." "That cannot be good for the world," Rimuru thought. "It is not," Seal said. "If he empties those lines all at once, the backlash will hit the mortals." Zeus raised the Master Bolt again. The air thinned. The lamps flickered out. Even the hearth flame dimmed for a heartbeat. Hestia hissed and pushed more of her power into the fire rather than let it go out. Rimuru moved. Enough. He called up what he and Hades had learned in the underworld. Not Azathoth. He was not going to open that door again in the same way. He did not need endless nothing to win this. He needed chains. Hades had given him a model of the old bindings, so Seal could study the pattern. They had mapped the logic quietly during the few hours of uneasy rest before the feast. "Underworld Seal is ready," Seal said. "Apply at the point where his authority lines pass through his core." Rimuru stepped into the charge. Zeus tried to bring the bolt down. Rimuru caught his wrist. The impact rocked the hall again, but this time the flash stayed trapped between their hands. Rimuru pushed through it, ignoring the sting, and slammed his other palm flat against Zeus' chest. Now he told Seal. The seal pattern ignited. It was not a visible chain like the one he had thrown earlier. That had been steel and stone and old words. This was pressure and geometry wrapped around a concept. It latched on to the lines of worship funneling into Zeus and pinched. Zeus' eyes went wide. "What are you doing?" he gasped. "Something Hades does every day," Rimuru said. He pushed. The lines of faith did not belong to him, and he did not take them. That would have just replaced one tyrant with another. He narrowed them. He cut away direct fire hose access. Instead of torrents that poured straight into Zeus' core whenever someone whispered his name, the lines bent and twisted, slowed by new rules. They would still answer, but not as an endless flood that could be pulled in one suicidal draw. Zeus felt the sudden lack. It was like trying to inhale and finding someone had wrapped a belt around his chest. The light around his body flickered again. The giant form shrank. His feet hit the cracked floor with a heavy thud. His knees buckled. He dropped. The master bolt slipped from his hand and bounced once on the stone before rolling toward the edge of the crater where Hera lay. Rimuru let go and stepped back. The new seal settled. He felt it click like a door shut and barred. Zeus knelt in front of him, shoulders heaving. Light still clung to his skin, but it was thin. The sense of limitless, arrogant storm was gone. His ichor, the blood that was not blood, leaked from a cut at his brow and ran down his face in a thin line. Seal gave a dry report. Authority access reduced by more than half. Core is exhausted. He will recover power with time, but not easily. Rimuru exhaled. So he's just strong now instead of absurd. Correct. Silence rolled outwards. The guards who were still conscious stared. The gods at the high table stared. Mortals on the terrace stared. Hera lay broken at the edge of the crater, but not as dead as she looked. Her body was ruined, but her core still smoldered like a coal under ash. Poseidon twitched and tried to push himself up on one arm, teeth grit in pain, burned flesh knitting too slowly. The outside thing has stopped pressing, Seal added quietly. It pulled back when Azathoth appeared. It is watching. Of course it was. Rimuru reached down and picked up the master bolt. It felt strange in his hand, heavy without mass. The sky hummed around it, as if waiting for orders. He could have swallowed it, stored it in his core, broken it down, taken the authority bound to it, and fused it with his own. Seal did not hide the temptation. "If you eat this, we gain control of the sky," Seal said. "You could rewrite the rules. Remove the arena games. Stop sacrifices. Protect mortals directly." Rimuru looked at Zeus. At Hera. At Hestia pressed against the barrier, eyes glass bright. At Athena watching with a strange light in her gaze. At the mortals who peeked up from the terrace, faces pale. He thought of Tempest. of Gabda trying to keep a straight face in a serious meeting, of Shuna scolding him gently when he forgot to rest, of Benimaru rolling his eyes and then throwing himself into a fight anyway. He could imagine a throne here. He could picture himself sitting on it with the master bolt across his knees. He could picture forcing change with it. He hated that picture. "I'm not a Sky King," he said inside. Seal did not argue. "You are a ruler already," Seal said instead. "You know what it costs." Rimuru lifted the bolt. The lightning at its tip crackled, restless. Zeus glared up at him. "Go on," Zeus said hoarsely. "Finish it. Take my throne. You have already taken my storm." Rimuru considered him. "Killing you would be simple," he said, "and very satisfying for a lot of people." Demeter made a strangled sound. Ares stared at Zeus with something like hatred now. Apollo looked at the broken bodies of Hera and Poseidon, and then at his father, and did not move to help. "But simple is not the same as right," Rimuru added. He looked at Hades. "You could keep him," Rimuru called. "Bind him below." Hades stepped forward out of the shadow of his pillar. "I could," Hades said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "If I drag him down and chain him, the sky will share his anger. The world would tremble every time he strains. Mortals would still pay for his pride." He met Rimuru's eyes. "I would do it if you asked," he said. "I just do not think you want that." Rimuru sighed. "I do not," he agreed. He turned back to Zeus. "Here is what is going to happen," he said. The hall seemed to lean closer to hear him. "You are not dead," Rimuru said. "You are weaker. Your easy power is gone. People will still pray to you. The sky will still answer when you're not being an idiot. You will still be king on this rock." Zeus sneered weakly. "Then nothing has changed." Rimuru shook his head. "No," he said. "That is the point. Something has to change." He raised the master bolt and held it in front of him. Power shivered along its length, wanting to move. "This thing is part of the problem," he said. "It is a toy that lets you pretend consequences do not exist. You cannot destroy it," Zeus rasped. "Maybe not," Rimuru said. He smiled faintly. "But I can do something better." He turned and walked away from Zeus. Not far, just a few steps. Then he flicked his wrist and sent the bolt flying. The weapon streaked across the hall, a line of pure white. Hades lifted a hand and opened a gap. Not to the deepest pits with the ancient thing he had just resealed, but to a pocket he prepared when he gave Rimuru the sample chain. A place with no doors of its own. The bolt vanished into that dark. The gap snapped shut. The sky outside rumbled in confusion. Clouds swirled, then steadied. Zeus gasped. "What have you done?" he demanded. "Lock your favorite toy where you cannot reach it until you learn to behave," Rimuru said. "You dare." "Yes," Rimuru said simply. He turned away from Zeus again and looked at the others. Now, judgment for more than one person. He walked to the edge of the crater. Hera still lay there. Her chest barely moved. Her face was half burned, half perfect. Her crown lay in pieces beside her, gold bent and broken. Demeter knelt by her sister's head, hands shaking as she tried to do something, anything. Rimuru crouched next to Hera. Her eyes flicked to his. There was still fire in them, even through pain and shock. "You came to Hestia's door last night," he said quietly. "You asked if I could be pointed." Hera laughed once, a short broken sound. "You are a weapon," she whispered. "You simply refused to admit it." "Maybe," he said. "I noticed you did not ask if I had my own aim." Her lips twisted. "So what now?" she asked. "You have me broken on the floor. Will you tear me apart, so you could be the new storm?" He looked at her, at the mortals she had ruined in games and arranged marriages, at the way she had reached for him first as a tool to bind Zeus rather than a person. The old way would have been simple. Kill her. Bind her. He shook his head. "You love the idea of being above people," he said. "Sitting up here, pulling strings, never feeling what it is like down there when everything breaks." Hera scoffed. "Even now, I was queen of the gods long before you oozed out of whatever swamp spat you out." "Exactly," Rimuru said. He straightened. "Hades, the underworld lord, stepped closer. Can your realm shape a god into mortal form without killing them?" Rimuru asked. Hades raised a brow. "Yes," he said. "If their core is already damaged, they would lose most of their power. They would live and die like a mortal for as long as the shape holds." Demeter looked up sharply. "You would do that to her?" she asked. Rimuru nodded once. "She likes rules," he said. "Let her live under them for a while, without a throne to hide behind. Hera stared up at him. You would cast me down, she whispered. I would give you what you never gave the people under your games, he said. Time without a crown. Time to be something other than a symbol of pride and spite. He looked at Hades. Can you make it last a century? He asked. That feels about right for learning. Hades considered Hera for a long moment. There was no joy in his face, no triumph. Only a sort of weary acceptance. Yes, he said. He knelt opposite Rimuru and set his hand near Eros' temple. You will not die here, Hades said to her. You will wake under the sky you used as a roof, and it will not know your name. You will feel hunger and fear. You will find joy in small things if you allow yourself. Hera tried to jerk away. You have no right, she spat. You forfeited the right to judge others when you started burning their children to prove your husband wrong, Hades said. His voice stayed calm. This is mercy. Rimuru reached out and placed 2 fingers on Eros' chest, over the faint pulse of her core. Seal. Help him. Acknowledged. Power moved. Not violent, not tearing. It was more like carefully lifting something sharp without cutting your fingers. Hades pulled the divine part of Hera away from her ruined body, thinning it, wrapping it in underworld rules. Seal analyzed and smoothed the transition. Bright power shrank. It compressed into a seed of light the size of a palm. Hades closed his fingers around it. Eros' body on the floor went still. Demeter covered her mouth and sobbed once. She's not dead, Hades said gently. She's not quite alive in the way you know either. She's in between, on the edge of a new story. He rose and met Rimuru's eyes. I will find a place for her, he said. Somewhere far from temples and thrones. Rimuru nodded. Make sure she has a hearth, he said. Hades almost smiled. I know someone who can arrange that. He stepped back. Shadows folded around him for a moment, then thinned. The seed of Hera was gone from his hand. One down, Seal said quietly. Rimuru looked at Poseidon. The sea god had dragged himself partly upright. Burns covered his chest and arms. His eyes were clearer now, stripped of arrogance by pain. What punishment? Seal asked. Rimuru walked over. You love the sea more than the sky, he said. Poseidon glared up at him. It is mine, he rasped. It is not, Rimuru said. It was here before you. It'll be here after. He crouched, ignoring the smell of cooked flesh. You want to fight, he said. You want to throw waves at cities and watch ships break. He thought of children on shores watching storms roll in, of farmers near the coast praying that the tide did not take their crops. Here's your deal, Rimuru said. He gave Seal a nudge. Translate into a binding. Ready. Rimuru spoke, clearly, so everyone could hear. You're tied to the sea, Rimuru said. From this day on, any storm you send that reaches mortal shore without warning will cut you. For every ship you sink for pride, you will feel what it is like to drown. For every village you flood because you are bored, your own lungs will burn. Poseidon flinched. You cannot leash me. Watch me, Rimuru said. He set his hand on the trident. Not to take it, to mark it. Seal wrapped a layer of law around it, using the same logic they had used on the underworld chain. Not to imprison, but to reflect, to make consequences hit the source. Done, Seal said. Rimuru let go. You want to play with storms? Do it, he said. Just understand it is not free. Poseidon stared at him, then at Zeus. For the first time, some of his anger turned away from the sky and toward himself. You make yourself judge, Zeus spat from his knees. No, Rimuru said. He looked up at the hall. At Athena, at Hestia, at Hermes, at Apollo and Artemis, at Demeter and Ares and Aphrodite and the rest. You all did this, he said. You sat and watched while mortals bled. You laughed at arena games and sacrifices and storms. You told yourselves it was necessary to keep faith sharp. He jabbed a thumb upward. There is something out there that eats the spaces between worlds, he said. It pushed through your cracks because you were too busy playing with your toys. It was ready to pry your chains open to see what would happen. Hermes swallowed. The old thing below, he said. The one you helped Hades keep asleep. Yes, Rimuru said. He let his gaze sweep the room again. I am leaving, he said. I have my own people and my own sky to worry about. Tempest needs me more than you do. Hestia's hand clenched against the barrier. But you do not get to pretend nothing happened here, Rimuru went on. He pointed at Zeus. You stay king, he said. You did some horrible things. You also saved this world more than once. I have seen enough rulers to know that killing you would not fix the pattern overnight. Zeus opened his mouth. Rimuru talked over him. But from now on, you are not alone at the top, he said. He turned his eyes to Athena. You like plans, he said. You like structures that work. She straightened. I do, she said. You get a seat that matters, Rimuru said. A real one. Not just the clever voice at the edge of the storm. You will build a council that can say no when the king wants to throw lightning for fun. Athena's eyes narrowed slightly. And if he ignores it? She asked. Rimuru looked at Hades. Then the underworld cuts his lines again, Rimuru said. Hades inclined his head. I will not enjoy it, he said. But I will do it. Rimuru looked at Hestia. And the hearth keeps record, he said. Her breath hitched. What? He smiled at her, tired but warm. Every home that prays to you already sends a small echo, he said. From now on, when a city burns under divine temper, the hearths in that city will whisper the truth. You will know. You will speak it here, even if it makes your brother angry. She stared at him, then nodded slowly. I can do that, she said. It was not a throne. It was more. It was a responsibility she already carried in quiet. Now it would have a voice. Zeus watched this, eyes dark. So you break my power and hand knives to my sisters and my niece, he said. I give them ways to stop you when you go too far, Rimuru said. He shrugged. You can still be loud, he added. You can still throw lightning at monsters. You can still roar at the sky. Just maybe not at farmers. Despite the tension, someone snorted. It might have been Hermes. The mood in the hall shifted a little. The crushing weight of the fight lifted, replaced by something strange and uncertain. A new order. Athena stepped away from the rec table and walked toward Rimuru. She stopped a polite distance from him and inclined her head. You took victory and did not keep the throne, she said. He spread his hands. I already have a desk somewhere else that I avoid, he said. One is enough. Her mouth twitched. You would make a good god here, she said quietly. With your power and my planning, we could build something that does not break mortals every time someone on a throne gets bored. For a second, the room felt very small. Just the two of them and the wreckage of an old world between them. Seal stayed silent. Rimuru thought about it. Athena was smart. She was not as kind as Hestia, but she was not cruel for sport. With her mind and his memory of another world, they could shape something better. He shook his head. If I stay, this world becomes mine, he said. It stops being yours. Athena held his gaze. Maybe that would not be a bad thing, she said. He smiled at her, gentle. It would, he said. There is a difference between helping fix something and stealing it. For a moment, she looked like she might argue. Then she sighed and let it go. He has people waiting, she said softly. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the hearth. I do, Rimuru said. She extended her hand. Then at least accept this, she said. He took her hand. Her grip was firm, warm. For a heartbeat, there was a flicker of something like longing in her eyes. Not romance exactly. More like recognition. One planner to another. Do not forget us completely, she said. We will have stories about you for a long time. He snorted. I'm sure half of them will be wrong. She smiled. Naturally. That is how myths work. She stepped back. The barrier around the hearth melted away with a soft sound. Hestia dropped her hands and took a long breath as if she had been underwater. She crossed the wrecked hall without looking at the crater or the broken thrones. Her bare feet left soft prints in dust and ash. Rimuru turned to meet her. Up close, he could see the fine tremor in her fingers. You did it, she said. He shook his head. We did something, he said. There's still that thing outside. There's still old chains below. You will still argue here. Her mouth quirked. We argue about who burned the bread sometimes, she said. He laughed. That is better than arguing about who to burn. Her eyes shone. You are leaving, she said. You knew that was always the plan, he said softly. She nodded. Knowing and liking her different, she said. She reached into the fold of her dress and pulled out a small pouch made of soft leather. A faint warm glow seeped from the edges. She held it out to him. Take this, she said. He blinked. What is it? She smiled. You already know. Seal supplied the answer. Condensed hearth flame. An ember that will not go out. Rimuru took the pouch. It hummed against his palm, gentle and steady. You're giving me a piece of your hearth, he said. A piece of every hearth that ever prayed to me, she said quietly. It will never run dry. Wherever you go, you can light a fire that remembers home. His chest tightened. "Thank you," he said. She stepped closer. Also, she rose on her toes and kissed him again. No rush this time. No stolen moment before someone barged in. It was simple and clear. A goodbye and a promise that did not need words. He cupped the back of her head for a second, fingers sliding through dark hair, and kissed her back. When they parted, her eyes were wet. "Come back someday," she whispered, "even if the stories twist you into something else." He rested his forehead against hers for a breath. "If the world still stands and my people are safe, I will visit for bread and arguments," he said. She smiled through tears. "I will keep a seat for you," she said. Hades cleared his throat quietly near the broken steps. "I will open the way when you are ready," he said. "The path between worlds is not something you should walk without a guide." Rimuru turned toward him. "You still owe me for patching your chain," he said. Hades actually smiled at that. "I will count this as partial payment," he said. Hermes drifted closer, staff resting on his shoulder. "You know," he said to Rimuru, "you just rewrote how this mountain works, and you're walking away." Rimuru shrugged. "If I stay, I stop being the one who can tell you when you're all being idiots," he said. Hermes snorted. "You think you can shout across worlds?" he asked. Rimuru looked at the pouch in his hand. "If I need to," he said. Seal confirmed in his mind. "We can maintain a thin observation line. No full presence. Just enough to warn them if something from outside pushes again." "Good," Rimuru thought. He took one last look at the hall. Zeus still knelt, eyes fixed on the empty air where the master bolt had been. His shoulders sagged. He looked old for the first time Rimuru had seen. Rimuru walked over. Zeus flinched as if expecting another hit. Rimuru just looked down at him. "Do not make me come back because you burned another city," Rimuru said. Zeus almost spat some insult. The words died on his tongue. "You could have killed me," Zeus said instead. "Yes," Rimuru said. "Why did you not?" Rimuru sighed. "Because some part of you actually cares about this sky," he said. "It is buried under pride and habit, but it is there. Because I know what happens when you tear out a pillar without a plan. Because Hestia would be sad." Zeus glanced toward his sister by the hearth, then away. Shame flickered across his face. "I do not know how to be anything else," he said roughly. "Learn," Rimuru said. He turned his back on the king of the gods and did not look back. The path down the mountain felt different now. The air was clearer. The storm that had sat over the peak for as long as anyone could remember had thinned. Clouds still ringed the top, but they did not cling. On the terraces, mortals watched him pass. No one bowed. They just stared, eyes wide. Some made signs of warding. A few dropped to one knee in instinct. Rimuru nodded to them. "Live," he said quietly. "That is all I want from you." At the foot of the steps, the air shimmered. Hades placed his hand in empty space and pulled. A tear opened. Not like the cracks the outside thing made. This was controlled, lines of power braided together. On the other side, Rimuru saw the faint impression of another sky. "You can follow this thread back to where you came from," Hades said. "The path will close behind you." Rimuru adjusted the strap of his pouch. He could feel the ember inside, warm against his side. Seal ran one last check. "Our core is stable. The outside presence has retreated for now. The new underworld seals hold." "Good," Rimuru said. He looked back up the mountain. Hestia stood at the edge of the terrace, one hand raised. Athena stood near her, already talking quietly with Hermes, eyes dark with thought. Rimuru raised his own hand in return. Then he stepped through. The world twisted. For a moment, there was only gray. Not void, not Azathoth, just the in-between space that roads like this used. Seal wrapped him in a smooth field that kept his being from smearing across possibilities. Parts of the outside thing brushed the edge, curious. Seal bared a fragment of Azathoth in answer. Not enough to wake it. Just enough to remind the watcher what waited behind this small piece of slime. The pressure pulled back at once. "Good choice," Seal said. Light returned. Rimuru staggered once as solid ground met his feet again. The air smelled familiar. Grass. Damp earth. The distant hint of slime farm from where the goblins kept the younger ones. He looked up. Tempest sky spread overhead, blue and wide. No master bolt. No Olympus. Just home. He breathed in and out. "You're back," Seal said. "Yeah," he said. Voices shouted in the distance. He heard someone yell his name. "Venimaru is on his way," Seal added. "He is running." Rimuru laughed. "Let him," he said. He reached into the pouch and drew out a tiny ember. It glowed soft orange in his palm, steady and warm. He flicked his fingers and sent it drifting toward the nearest empty fire pit. It landed, sank into the wood, and the logs caught at once with a clean flame that did not smoke. The light from it felt like Hestia's kitchen. Rimuru watched it for a moment. Somewhere far above another world, a god of thunder sat on a damaged throne and tried to think before shouting. A goddess of wisdom rolled out new plans that involved councils instead of cages. A goddess of the hearth listened to the sound of mortal homes and kept count. A fallen queen woke in a small house in a fishing village with no memory of crowns, only an old ache in her chest that might someday turn into something softer. The old system had not shattered completely. It had bent. It had new joints now. Rimuru knew it would not be perfect. Nothing was. But the cracks below were sealed a little tighter. The outside hunger had noticed something it did not want to test again soon. Mortals would have a little more space to live. That was enough for one strange trip. Benimaru finally reached him, out of breath even with his strength. "You have been gone a while," Benimaru said. Rimuru grinned. "You would not believe the meeting I just had," he said. Benimaru groaned. "Please tell me there were not more crazy gods." Rimuru thought about thunder and void and a small house with warm bread. "Just one mountainful," he said. He started walking toward town with his friend at his side and a new flame at his back, leaving Olympus to sort out its changed sky.